It all begins with our protagonist waking up extremely disoriented in a hospital bed. The doctor asks if he can hear him and whether he remembers his name or the incident, but in the young man's mind, he's just an ordinary graduate student. He recalls that there was a disaster in the lab and that he lost consciousness while trying to save the hard drive that held his academic research. He looks around, trying to confirm whether he's truly in a hospital room. In an instant, he notices something terribly strange. He's utterly stunned upon seeing that the reflection in the mirror isn't his own. From the few memories that surfaced during his 2 days of hospitalization, he begins to piece together what happened. The young man reaches the astonishing conclusion that he has ended up reincarnated in someone else's body. The original owner of the body is named Kim Yo-sung, a Korean boy living in Japan who was studying for his high school entrance exam. The original Yo-sung suffered a severe car accident over the weekend and spent several days unconscious in the hospital. The protagonist realizes that his former self perished in the lab disaster and that his soul has now taken over this student's body. In that moment, he begins to celebrate at the thought that finally he's free from the true torment of his graduate school life, but he quickly tries to stay calm, reminding himself not to jump to conclusions because this situation could end abruptly. As the car draws near a building, he wonders how he'll manage to adapt and live in this new reality. Upon arriving home, Yo-sung's mother gently tells him to go get some rest, and he politely agrees. He stops in front of a door and notices his body moving on its own, as if it already knows the way to Yo-sung's room. Though it feels strange and invasive to enter a stranger's room, the young man slowly opens the door and asks permission. Yet with a quick glance inside, he's frozen, stunned by what he sees. He comes across several shelves packed with comics and collections of books of every conceivable type. He moves a little further and finds animated character posters plastered exaggeratedly on the walls. As he scans the room, spotting figurines and cushions strewn everywhere, he realizes the former owner of the body was a hardcore fan. The young man lets out a sigh disheartened and wonders what he'll do now in such a bizarre situation. He sits on the floor right in the middle of that room, surrounded by massive collectible figures, and wonders if he can live as Kim Yo-sung. The kid worries that Yo-sung's parents will suspect him if his behavior shifts, and he has no clue about that fanboy universe. While brainstorming a way out, he glances at the room's mirror and spots a very specific poster hanging right beside it. He sees a character on the poster with the exact same haircut and the same red bracelet that Yonk wears. Suddenly, he jerks away from the mirror in panic, realizing a chilling detail about that poster. The protagonist recognizes the illustration and knows the poster comes from a wildly famous comic. He notes Yo-sung had been dressed as that character all along, realizing the kid was an extreme-level fan. The kid starts scanning the shelves, hunting for the other work to figure out how Yo-sung used to act day to day. He grabs a book with an elf on the cover and finds that illustration incredibly embarrassing and over the top. As he studies the cover more closely, a memory from his past begins to surface. He recalls a classic romance comic called Scramble Love, which became a global sales phenomenon. The story adhered perfectly to the traditional rom-com formula and was praised for the author's distinctive style. Yet the ending caused controversy because the protagonist chose his childhood friend over the other girls. He remembers seeing countless people online whining and furiously arguing about that unexpected finale. Seeing that Yo-sung's book seemed to follow the same vein, the kid drops to the floor and starts reading to verify. As he flips the pages, he becomes completely absorbed, realizing he simply can't stop. He spends the whole night awake devouring the volumes, and he admits the story is truly very entertaining. The next day, his mother walks into the family restaurant and asks him to take orders if any customers show up. He answers with a dramatic, animated line, and although it feels embarrassing, he sighs in relief when his mother seems unfazed. The young man dons his server apron, thinking that being the son of a barbecue joint owner is perfect for his protein diet. At that moment, the doorbell chimes, announcing the arrival of customers, and he looks up, startled, toward the entrance. A blonde brat walks in arm with a girl who holds his wrist, and Yo-sung feels he's seen them somewhere before. The bubbly blonde declares, excitedly, that she'll feed him all day to make sure he can't slip away from her at all. She calls the boy Ryuji in an overly affectionate way, leaving the blonde kid visibly mortified by the situation. Hearing that familiar name, Yo-sung's eyes snap wide open as a completely unbelievable suspicion takes hold. Immediately, he recalls the vivid details and iconic illustrations he saw in the successful manga Scramble Love. The protagonist is stunned to realize that the customer standing before him is none other than Sakamoto Ryuji himself from the story. He freezes, watching the two youths in the middle of the restaurant, unable to believe what's unfolding right before his eyes. In that instant, Yo-sung realizes with mounting dread that he hasn't just been been reincarnated. He's landed straight inside a book. He scrambles to piece together the whole situation, recalling that he was just an ordinary graduate student before the tragic lab accident. But the kicker, the former owner of this body, Kim Yo-sung, was nothing more than a background extra in the comic Scramble Love. Basically, now he's just a minor side character, stuck in the world of a book he spent the whole night devouring. The worst part is he never read the full original comic. He only knows a handful of details he scraped from the internet years ago. Still, he tries to convince himself that, being a classic rom-com, the world poses no real danger. He concludes that his sole mission for a peaceful survival is to stay as far away as possible from the story's protagonist, Sakamoto Ryuji. If he can keep his distance well clear of the main plot, he'll finally be able to live a quiet, normal life as a background extra. From that point, the young man threw himself into studying, learning how to act like Yo-sung, and enrolled in a school far from his original hometown. He leveraged his past life intellect to become the top student and earn a full scholarship. After that, he even joined the student council. He joined the student council and completely overhauled his old personality, using puberty as an excuse. Yet, despite every change he made to his new routine, the fact that he remains in the boy's body never reversed. He accepts that he must adapt to this reality and starts plotting practical ways to brace for an uncertain future. The young man tries to map out plans to save money and invest in famous stock, but he realizes frustrated that he still doesn't have enough funds. Determined to improve, he starts running daily on the treadmill, firmly believing that physical strength and stamina are essential in life. While he pushes himself doing push-ups, he thinks that even in a romantic comedy world, it's always good to be physically prepared. He continues giving his all in heavy weight training, pouring everything into each rep to strengthen his body. The young man discovers that training is immensely satisfying and ends becoming completely obsessed with gaining mass muscular. Time passes, spring arrives with cherry blossoms in bloom, and Yo-sun's new school routine is finally about to start. He arrives at school with his backpack and looks at the classroom schedule board. At that moment, a classmate approaches cheerfully and greets him, commenting that he arrived very early that day. In reality, that guy wasn't the protagonist, but a muscular dude who looked like he stepped out of a fighting series. His friend asks which classroom he got assigned to, and Yaon replies that he still doesn't know his group. He walks calmly through the flower-filled courtyard, thinking that his first year in this world flew by. The protagonist now sports a much more mature and confident appearance, completely different from when he woke up in the hospital. He trained relentlessly and lifted heavy weights over the past month to gain a substantial amount of muscle mass. The young man did all that on purpose so he could protect himself from any physical danger that might arise in the future. After all, in that comic book world, absurd things like beings from other realms or apparitions could show up at any moment. He clenches his fist with determination, telling himself that all that training was only to guarantee his well-being. He managed to get through the first school year unscathed, acting normally, so he decides to keep doing the same from now on. But right after, as he approaches the doorway of the second-year classroom, he hears someone shout Ryuji's name with great force. Running in, beaming, is Yaguchi Maya, the main heroine of the original Scramble-a-log love story. The original protagonist, Sakamoto Ryuji, replies, a bit discouraged, that his day didn't start well. Seeing that, Yusunga breaks out in a cold sweat, realizing that, by a twist of fate, he ended up in the same classroom as the protagonist. He bitterly laments having chosen a school so far from home in vain, as his plans for a peaceful life fell apart. While Yusung watches from a distance, Ryuji starts complaining to Maya that he lost his wallet early. The blonde also complains to Maya that he lost his wallet early. The blonde also mentions that he ended up tripping over an unknown girl on the way, which puts Yaosung immediately on alert. Suddenly, the teacher bursts into the classroom, ordering everyone to be silent and quickly return to their seat. He calls for everyone's attention and says that, even though it's the first day of class and things are a bit chaotic, they need to calm down. As the group starts murmuring with curiosity, the teacher announces he has a very important announcement for the students. He flashes a broad smile and declares enthusiastically that his class has received a new transfer student that very day. The door opens and the beautiful blonde girl, who was at the restaurant with Ryuji, walks into the classroom beaming. All the boys start praising her beauty, prompting the teacher to joke that they should give the same attention to the blackboard. He asks everyone to be kind to her and tells the girl to step forward and introduce herself to the group. She cheerfully introduces herself as Kishimoto Rika, revealing she comes from another city and loves cats, sweets, and taking naps. Watching her, Yo-sung thinks it was obvious the new heroine would end up right in the protagonist's classroom. He pauses, pondering the situation, predicting that the book's story is about to begin unfolding right there. He recalls that Rika was an extremely popular character among readers. Even without having read the original story in full, and despite knowing she wasn't the final winner of the comic, he watches in silence as the teacher assigns seat. Finally, the teacher points to the empty seat right beside Ryuji and orders the blonde to look after his new classmate. Ryuji. He stares at the girl, stunned, realizing she's the same aggressive youngster he had bumped into that morning. The blonde girl also widens her eyes and lets out a startled scream as she instantly recognizes Ryuji in the middle of the classroom. She points at him, straight at his face, and calls him bold in front of everyone, recalling the embarrassing incident they had earlier. Ryuji gets angry at the accusation, but the teacher thinks it's great they already know each other and orders the girl to sit down right away. Rika sits on the bench next to Ryuji and fixes him with a highly annoyed, distrustful stare. She turns her face, huffing with anger, to show she wants no conversation with him at that moment. However, just after that, she discreetly extends her hand and returns the lost wallet to Ryuji. He thanks her apologetically, while Yoosung watches from afar and begins desperately wishing to transfer schools. Yoon tries to stay focused and remembers that everything he's done so far has been to secure a peaceful future without big surprises, even without having read the comic in full. He knows he can predict events using the standard logic of romantic comedies. He knows that things in comics never follow the standard logic of romantic comedies. He knows that things in comics never turn out as planned, which is why he always stays current by reading the newest magazine. Read those works was his strategy to familiarize himself with every possible cliché and pattern of this kind of romantic story. All of a sudden, Ryuji stands up, takes Rika's hands, and asks if she can step out of the classroom with him for a few moments. With a very serious expression, the protagonist says he wants to talk about what happened between them this morning. Rika blushes slightly and looks embarrassed, but ultimately accepts, saying she can listen for just a minute. They both leave together from the classroom under Yosung's watchful eyes, who begins to suspect that something important is about to happen. Determined not to miss this event, Yosung rises from his seat and makes up any excuse that he needs to use the bathroom. He slips out silently through the door, exuding a dark and intimidating presence which draws the attention of every. He begins to contemplate the school's layout, knowing that there's only one place perfect for a couple to talk alone. He fixes his gaze with total certainty, knowing there's only one classic spot for such a private conversation to happen. Without wasting a second, the young man heads to the area right behind the main school building. Ryuji clasps his hands together and bows deeply before Rika, offering a sincere apology for this morning's misunderstanding. Hidden among the bushes, Yaosung watches the scene and instantly recognizes the classic apology posture. He looks displeased at Ryuji's dramatic pose, thinking it's exactly what you'd expect from a protagonist. Rika simply watches the bowed boy in front of her with his arms crossed and a serious expression on his face. But soon the girl can't hold back and bursts into laughter at the boy's worried look. She flashes a mischievous grin and, in a friendly tone, tells him he's far more innocent and goofy than she imagined. Ryuji, confused, asks if she wasn't upset, and she replies she's not selfish enough to hold a grudge over an accident. She concludes she only acted that way because his shocked face was hilariously funny, leaving Ryuji quite irritated. Yaosung watches the girl from afar, recalling that her cheerful, jokey personality made her the audience's favorite. The young man watches intently from among the leaves, aware he's witnessing the very first romance moment between the main pair. Yet as he admires the perfect cliché unfolding, he suddenly feels a familiar presence drawing near silently from behind. The young man gets a huge fright when someone suddenly calls his name right behind him, interrupting his spying. A feminine voice asks him distrustfully what the future student council secretary is doing crouched among the plants. A beautiful girl with a red fan over her face asks him if he's doing something shameful like spying on the schoolgirls. Her name is Seonji Kumiko, the student council president from a noble, influential family, playing the classic rival. Even though she's a secondary character and rival in the original comic, Yaosung knows he must keep her from getting involved with the protagonist. To cover it up, Yaosung claims he was merely examining a tree branch to decorate the student council office. Kumiko hides her face behind her fan and remarks that it seems a bit odd to place something like that in the boardroom. The young man watches her silently, his expression calm, waiting to see how the girl will react. Kumiko blushes slightly and, to Yaosung's surprise, decides to accept the branch, saying she'll put it in the meeting room. Yaosung thanks her politely, but he's taken aback to see that such a simple excuse actually worked on her. She changes the subject and asks what brought him here, commenting that she thought he'd be too busy with the start of classes. Kumiko reveals she'd like to lunch with the council members to integrate better, and she decided to invite Yaosung personally. She turns around brightly, urging the young man to head to the cafeteria right away before every seat gets taken. Yaosung follows her in silence, but thinks to himself that nothing in that modest cafeteria could satisfy her refined palate. Kumiko lets out a sarcastic laugh and tells the young man that he clearly doesn't know her at all to say such a thing. She asks dramatically if he's implying that she doesn't understand the culture and cuisine of ordinary people. The girl declares that she loves eating simple dishes, simple ones, and recalls that she even ate a bowl of rice with pork. The last time, Yo-soon Lee watches skeptically, thinking she only consumes fine cuts in the council office and that this conversation is pure pretense. He decides to break the mood and calmly informs her that the school cafeteria doesn't serve that kind of pork dish. Kumiko is surprised and asks what the cafeteria does serve, and Yo-sung replies that they have a very similar option called udon. Upon hearing the name, he finds the term extremely crude and odd. Complaining that the dish has an awful sound, Kumiko starts trembling with disgust and panics as she thinks whether she'll really have to eat that oddly named dish. Yoo-sung just watches her with a bored expression, remembering that he had just boasted, claiming he understood common food perfectly. Suddenly, a bespectacled youth named Akakakairo appears, saying he had been looking for Kumiko everywhere. Shinjiro notices the muscular boy's presence and asks him directly if he is Kim Yo-sung, the student council member. The vice president adjusts his glasses with a distrustful look, seeming to draw his own conclusions about what he's seeing. He points at Yo-sung and starts shouting, asking him if he even knows that he's part of the student council of the school. Shinjiro complains that Kumiko even skipped lunch to go find him, which leaves the president completely flushed with embarrassment. Yo-sung is confused by the dramatic scene, without understanding why the girl would do something like that just to find him. Kumida gets angry at Shinjiro's outburst and furiously denies being sad or worried about the secretary Shinjiro's absence. She insists she will not tolerate anyone treating the president insolently. While she tries to silence him, the young man launches a dramatic loyalty speech, but Kumiko drags him away in a hurry, telling him his food will get cold. She says goodbye to Yoo-sung, letting him know they'll eat later, while Shinjiro keeps hurling accusations at the youngster from afar. Yoo-sung stands there, his face a bored expression huge, unable to comprehend absolutely nothing of what just happened there. Later, after classes end, the crowd begins to flood the stairwell leading to Yoo-sung Metro Station. He draws everyone's attention in the station thanks to his extremely strong build and enviable physique. He reflects that the true story of Scramble Love must be kicking off right today, with the grand meeting of the protagonist. He thinks that, thanks to his training, everyone at school steers clear of him as if he were a threat, which is perfect for staying out of Ryuji's storyline. He flashes a confident grin, celebrating the fact that his relentless weight training has paid off, proving that size truly makes a difference. Glancing at the subway schedule, he lets out a sigh of frustration as he sees there are still 18 minutes until the next train arrives. Cracking open a can of juice, he tells himself he only needs to focus on living a normal, extraordinary life. Far away from any trouble, he smiles victoriously, thinking that everything is going exactly as he planned, when suddenly he feels someone tug his sleeve lightly. To his total bewilderment, the one who appears is the new transfer student Rika, who greets him with an overly upbeat, smiling demeanor. Yo-sung panics outright when he runs into her, wondering what this important girl is doing in his path. The blonde, phone in hand and beaming, says she's lost and thrilled to have bumped into him so quickly. Rika shows the phone to the young man and asks him kindly if, by any chance, he knows how to get to the address displayed on the screen. Yo-sung knows the route but remains highly suspicious, wondering how she knows his name so abruptly. He notes the confusion on the young man's face and quickly points. He points his finger at Yo-sung's uniform, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Rika beams happily and tells him his name is printed in bold on the ID badge of his school uniform. The young man realizes the mistake and notes that he had completely forgotten the obvious detail that he was handing over his student ID. The blonde girl smiles warmly, insisting she was absolutely certain he was a genuinely good person. From the very first moment, Yo-sung feels a mix of surprise and contemplation at the kind words and the unexpected praise the young man just received from the girl. He's bewildered, sweating with nerves, unable to grasp why she's drawing so many conclusions about him. He asks her directly what it meant and how she remembered him on their very first day of class together. Rika laughs, saying he was radiating a strange, intimidating aura in the room, making it impossible for anyone not to notice his presence. She goes on to say she's heard rumors that he's already taken on 50 motorcyclists single-handedly, and that even the baseball coach tried to recruit him. She cheerfully concludes that watching him treat the most popular girl in the class with such ease made her realize that he's truly a good kid. Yo-sung falls into absolute silence, watching her, and with dread realizes the massive misunderstanding she's just created about his image that she just forged about his reputation. He knows notices desperately that she has misunderstood everything backward and that she's become entangled with one of the most pivotal heroines in history. He understands why she's so popular, yet he wonders if he should exploit the alarming rumors to try to push her away. Rika shouts his name at the top of her lungs, startling the boy and finally snapping him out of his deep thought. The blonde makes an annoyed gesture because he fell silent after her compliment, and he quickly tries to apologize for the distraction. She crosses her arms and asks what his reply is, and Yo Sung, at a loss for words, merely thanks her apologetically for the compliment. The girl smiles understandingly and declares with absolute certainty that even if the other students judge him harshly, soon everyone will see who he truly is. Rika smiles and says that all the alarming rumors about him are just nonsense, and that behind that serious exterior, he's actually very kind. She flashes a radiant smile and says she wants to be his friend from today, urging them to look after each other. Yo Sung watches her in silence and with a sigh realizes his attempt to scare her off with that unfriendly expression was a total failure. He accepts that given Rika's relentless personality, avoiding contact with her while sharing the same class would be impossible. To keep up his facade as an ordinary student, he decides to accept and says with a serious face that he'll also count on her friendship. Seeing his acceptance plan work, Yo Sung feels a little relief at keeping things under control with the wealthy girl. Then he remembers what he really wanted and asks if she knows how to get to her new house near Seijo Station, confessing that the subway lines are confusing, and Yo Sung takes her phone to calmly study the map. He notices the address is in one of the city's most affluent neighborhoods, discovering the blonde also comes from a rich family. The young man explains that his house lies on the same route as hers and they'll take the same train, leaving her extremely excited. Yo Sung says he lives at Shitoshi Funabashi Station, which is located just 2 stops away from the new upscale neighborhood. He is amazed by the huge coincidence and cheerfully remarked that the fact their houses are so close must be the work of destiny itself. Yo Sung pretends to agree, but inside he begins to devise a clever plan to take advantage of this unexpected situation. He recalls that, although he prepared a lot, his biggest problem is never having read the full original Scramble love story. He realizes the best strategy is to befriend Rika to get direct, accurate information about the original comics event. The young man plans to work behind the scenes to help the protagonist, using her information to ensure the story's course never shifts. He smiles confidently, knowing this small interference to aid both of them won't alter the main plot at all. He asks her kindly if she'd like a drink and offers to buy one. He says it's a welcome gift for their new friendship, and Rika gladly accepts, requesting a can of cola. Without missing a beat, she grabs the ice-cold can from the vending machine and downs the soda in one eager gulp, letting out a sigh of pure satisfaction, and cheerfully remarks that nothing in the world beats a good soda. Yo Sung notices her enthusiasm and asks if she loves the drink that much, and she explains she's on a strict diet. He gets confused by the diet comment and fixes his eyes on her, trying to grasp why she's putting in so much effort. Proudly, Rika pulls out her phone and shows the young man a photo from a photo shoot, very elegant. She reveals that she used to work as a fashion magazine model in her old city, and that keeping up appearances is mandatory in that profession. Yo Sung jokes that she looks like a different person in the photo and asks if it's because of the makeup, leaving the girl quite indignant. The train arrives at the platform and he seizes the chance to change the subject quickly and board the car, leaving the blonde complaining about his escape. The green train slams its doors with a chime and speeds up along the track toward its destination. Inside the car, the relaxed atmosphere fades as some students stare fearfully at Yo Sung from afar and murmur with dread, warning each other not to make eye contact, while Yo Sung and Rika travel calmly amid that crowded car. Rika cheerfully remarked that it was great taking the subway with him to learn the route, but Yo Sung feels as if his peace has been disturbed. He decides to focus on the station route map to truly help her find her way home without getting lost. He points out the correct direction and tells her to go ahead, but Rika complains that he walks too fast for her to keep up. When the train doors open, Yo Sung steps into the car, leaving the desperate girl, thinking he was going to abandon her on the platform. Upon arriving at Shitoshi Funabashi Station, Yo Sung says goodbye, announcing he'll get off there, and Rika thanks him profusely for his help today. As the automatic doors close slowly, she bids farewell with a smile, saying she'll count on his help again tomorrow. The train quickly departs the platform, and the young man watches the car vanishing into the tunnel as he ponders her words. He stands there, utterly motionless, wondering if she truly meant that the two of them will meet every day. The next day, at school lunchtime, students dash excitedly toward the cafeteria to claim their meals. Meanwhile, Yo Sung walks to the school's outer area and sits alone on a wooden bench near the parking lot. He opens his wooden lunchbox, revealing stealing a portion of beautifully decorated homemade rice rolls for his lunch. The young man picks up one of the delicious rolls with his chopstick, ready to savor his meal peacefully under the shade, but his peace is short-lived as Rika suddenly appears, watching him with an extremely dramatic and worried, tearful expression. She runs to him, tears in her eyes, asking sadly if he usually eats alone in that isolated spot every day. Yo-sung calmly explains that he prefers to eat out there to keep his classmates from feeling uneasy around his intimidating presence. He tells her not to worry and reminds her that she herself said people will soon see who he really is, given enough time. The young man says he just needs to wait patiently, leaving the girl deeply moved and flushed by his mature demeanor. She wipes her tears, notices his lunchbox, and curiously asks if those are Korean rice rolls, commenting that she only knew the dish from dramas. Yo soon offers her a roll to try, but he's taken aback by the astonishing speed with which she flips from tears to a grin. He flashes a mischievous grin and cheerfully suggests that, starting today, the two of them will eat together out there every day. Rika makes an annoyed gesture, blushing, and denies that he's asking her to dine together just because of the tasty dish. Yo soon reflects that he's ended up getting pretty close to her and admits that the blonde's contagious energy explains the huge popularity she enjoys. She savors the food with bright eyes and asks if her family actually owns a traditional Korean restaurant. The young man downplays it, saying it's just a simple meal, but he appreciates the compliment and Rika asks him to send her regards to his mother. Very kindly, she offers him a piece of Japanese egg omelet from her own lunchbox in exchange for another piece of rice roll. Yunko eyes Rika's decorated lunchbox and decides to accept the trade, taking a slice of the omelet to try. He brings the food to his mouth calmly and begins to chew, anticipating the taste of a traditional Japanese. And very tasty. However, when he bites the omelet, Yo soon widens his eyes in terror and is completely stunned by the dish's peculiar flavor. It's so sweet he wonders, horrified, if the girl emptied an entire jar of pure sugar into it. He asks, frightened, how much sugar she added, and Rika answers innocently. She says she only added the amount she thought necessary. Yo soon gets worked up and warns her that consuming that much sweetness is harmful, promising to make a healthy, sugar-free Korean version for her. The next time, Rika asks what he usually puts in the omelet, and upon hearing that he only uses salt, she finds that combination strangely salty. She laughs, saying his culinary tastes are very peculiar, while he thinks to himself that it's the girl's palate that's ruined. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing whistle slices through the air and abruptly cuts the relaxed conversation between the two in the parking lot. Yo-sung looks confused toward the whistle's direction and spots, in the distance, the student council president accompanied by her loyal sidekick. Kumiko is flushed with rage, blowing the whistle with all her might to draw the two students' attention, trembling with anger. She mutters that even the heavens might forgive some things, but inappropriate relationships between students are absolutely unacceptable. She points to her red folder authoritatively and shouts that, as student council president, I can't allow that behavior, Yoo-sung. She wears a huge look of doubt, unable to grasp what's improper about two people sharing a lunchbox. Kumiko walks toward them. She says that a boy and a girl hiding to eat in an isolated corner is, without doubt, a very suspicious relationship. Shinjiro steps forward imposingly and accuses the boy of trying to spin simple excuses after being caught in the act. Yoo-sung denies it calmly, comments that the two seem to have a strange habit of appearing out of nowhere in front of him. Lately, Shinjiro retorts that it's natural to run into each other since they're both on the student council, but Kumiko spots the blonde girl beside the boy. She hides half her face behind her fan and shyly asks if he has any important explanation to give. Rika suddenly points a toothpick at her and cheerfully says that finally remembered who she is, calling her the shadowy president. The student council president is left completely without reaction and stammers, stunned by that bizarre nickname she's been given. The blonde laughs, explaining that rumors say that. She laughs, explaining that rumors claim she always walks alone in that black uniform, and now she finally understands why she's called that. Kumiko erupts at the remark, shouting, red with shame, that the black uniform is meant to command respect and uphold the council's dignity. Rika says with utter naturalness that everyone at school thinks she's just in a costume and that she should simply accept the fact. Kumiko falls into desperation as she discovers the students are mocking her behind her back, while Rika tries to console her, offering her a snack, crying in humiliation. The president shouts that she'll let it slide just for today, but she swears, finger pointed, that this affront won't be left unanswered. She darts away weeping with shame, hidden behind her red fan, leaving Shinjiro bewildered, unable to grasp where she's headed. The young man sprints after her, shouting for his leader, while Yusungu and Rika stand on the bench, watching the odd scene, clueless. Rika innocently asks what she did wrong, and Yusun answers honestly quickly, who admits she has no clue why. Later, Rika coos at him as she walks toward the boy standing in the hallway holding a paper. She curiously asks why he hasn't gone home yet, since regular class hours ended a while ago. Yaosung explains he's been perusing the school club brochure to decide whether to join any, now that he has more free time. The girl, upbeat, suggests the two take a tour of the school today to check out and try some clubs up close. She says visiting the clubs in person is far better than just standing there thinking. Does Yaosung silently agree? The young man concurs with the idea and asks which club they should start with. Leaving the girl thrilled about the tour, Yaosung solemnly declares he plans to visit absolutely every club in the school, leaving Rika stunned and confused by that decision. With a razor-sharp, determined stare, the young man reveals the real reason behind this marathon of visits. He says, radiating an alarming violet aura, that he wants to test the limits of his physical strength by trying his skills in the club. Their first stop is the soccer club, where a group of students are already gathered on the field, conducting their daily drills. One of the players sprints and blasts the ball toward the goal during a finishing drill. Unfortunately, his aim is horrendous, and the ball sails far past the net, leaving the team's goalkeeper thoroughly disappointed. The player grumbles in frustration for missing, while a teammate mocks him, saying he's botched 5 shots in a row. They start arguing in the middle of the field, trading barbs about who the worst player is, as the others try to train in peace. At that moment, a gray-haired youth approaches arrogantly, claiming kicking the ball into the net holds no secret. A voice from outside grabs their attention, and the players turn, irritated by the interruption, complaining about being called that. Suddenly, a tall player wearing the number 10 jersey appears behind them, leaving the kids utterly terrified. With a very serious stare, he warns them that the club also needs the field and orders them to leave at once. They swallow their saliva as they realize that's Ryohei, the football club captain and a third-year student. Terrified, they mutter hollow apologies and scramble to run away before things get worse. One club member thanking the captain for his help, relieved that those troublemakers finally left Ryohei. Then he asks him what he thought of this year's new recruits, but the youngster replies that none caught his eye. The captain falls into thought, eager to win this year's national championship, yet aware the squad lacks talent. He muses that if they could recruit at least one truly strong freshman, the results would be entirely different. Meanwhile, the blonde kid stalks, fuming, cursing the humiliation he just endured. He suggests going back to demand a rematch, but his fearful friend says he doesn't want any trouble. The blonde calls him a coward, yet the friend warns that the captain is dangerous and kicks the at over 100 kilometers per hour. The blonde retorts that what matters in a fight is experience, but he's cut off when he bumps shoulders with someone. Completely furious at being shoved mid-sentence, he whirls around, ready to yell at anyone. Without, however, he freezes when he comes face to face with the massive, intimidating Yusun, who stares back cluelessly. With alarmingly, the protagonist calmly asks the boy to repeat what he just said. The two ruffians begin to break out in nervous sweat and realize immediately who they collided with. In total panic, they run screaming for the air, uncontrolled fury, to save their own lives. Yusungi and Rika stand in the middle of the road, utterly clueless about the reason for that desperate flight. A few students who witnessed everything murmur in admiration that the kid took down the ruffians just with a glance. Rika scolds them, saying he shouldn't pick fights, but Yun defends himself, explaining he only looked at them. The girl sighs, noting that even his stare is already a problem, making the kid realize that socializing won't be easy. Back on the field, one of the football players notices a strange movement nearby and grows curious. Rika suggests kicking off the tour with the soccer club, but Yo Sung's arrival leaves all the surrounding students panicked. The player wonders, distressed, whether the feared youngster came for revenge, fearing that no one could stop him if he loses his temper. Captain Ryohei tries to calm his teammate, telling him he doubts the visit could be for such a simple reason. The teammate insists he's a troublemaker and that someone like him would never want to join the soccer club. Ryohei admits he's heard plenty of bad rumors about him, but says everything becomes crystal clear when you see him up close. He figures a kid with that absurd physique wouldn't waste his time just picking fights with petty thugs. The captain takes the initiative, steps toward the protagonist, and says he's heard quite a bit about him around the school. He introduces himself as Ryohei, welcomes him, and asks him outright what brought the youngster to the soccer club today. Yo Sung replies calmly that he'd like to try out for the team and asks what the required procedure is. Up close, Ryohei is stunned to notice that even though the kid isn't much taller, his presence makes him feel tiny. He eyes the massive muscles under the kid's shirt and is deeply impressed by that intimidating build. Ryohei quickly envisions that if he can recruit Yo Sung, the dream of clinching the national championship will finally be within reach. He stares intently at the protagonist and decides he needs that powerhouse anyway for his soccer squad. The silence and the captain's stare player feel odd to Yo-sung, prompting Ryo-hai to apologize hastily and begin outlining the admission trial. He explains that the trial consists of kicking the ball with full force toward the goal with only one chance to strike. Standing over the ball at the penalty spot, the protagonist tells himself he must unleash his full power on this kick, knowing he has only one shot. He decides to channel every ounce of energy and give it his all. The youngster summons his concentrated muscular force and braces his supporting leg to deliver the maximum power he can muster. He pushes himself to the limit, unleashing an absurd amount of stored leg strength to unleash a devastating kick. He delivers an incredible, thunderous kick, spawning a gust of wind and a massive violet energy wave around the ball. The ball rockets away at an absurd speed, creating a deafening impact that sends a fierce wind sweeping across the field. The captain and the other players are left utterly gaped, unable to even track the ball's rapid trajectory. When they glance toward the goal, they see the net completely untouched and intact after the devastating shot. Ryohei sweats in terror, unable to grasp what just happened, horrified as he wonders where the ball vanished. He looks down and discovers the soccer ball has completely exploded the instant it was struck. Seeing the damage, Yo-sung quits football and asks Rika about other nearby sports clubs. He decides to try the basketball club next with the girl at his side, finding the day's destruction oddly entertaining. The rumor spreads through the school and the pupils start whispering whether the dreaded kid plans to wipe out every academy club in the hallway. The students comment enthusiastically about the protagonist's marathon of visits and sprint so they don't miss the spectacle. Yukika, the captain of the kendo club, hears the rumors and thinks to herself that the feared Yusung finally started moving. When he tries the basketball club, Yusung slams a dunk so monstrous it shatters the backboard, leaving everyone horrified. In the baseball club, the kid delivers a violent swing that creates a massive impact and scares the players present on the field. When he passes by the tennis court, the force of his swing tears a hole in the court floor, alarming the members who were watching the vivid scene. Cheerfully crosses off the soccer, baseball, and tennis clubs from his list, marking them with tiny hearts as completed. She celebrates exuberantly that they cleared another trial for the first grade while walking beside the protagonist. The young man looks at the sheet and calmly asks how many sports clubs remain to be visited today. The day still has clubs left to visit. With a mischievous grin, the girl remarks she had been expecting his curiosity about the task list. She slides on a pair of glasses, striking an intellectual pose, and says she's going to answer using all the data detailed she's gathered so far. She explains that removing ping pong, volleyball, and judo, which aren't being tested today, only 3 options remain on the list. The first remaining option is the track and field club, which helps greatly develop physical endurance and focus. The second alternative is the swimming club, focused on improving cardiovascular capacity and overall body strength in the water. Finally, she presents the kendo club, known for training personal discipline and mental strength of its practitioners. Rika concludes her detailed explanation, reaffirming that those 3 are the only clubs available for trials today. She asks proudly whether her explanation was good, and Yo-sung he thanks her flatly, saying he didn't have to push himself so hard. Rika then he asks where they should head now and cheerfully offers to guide her to any of the chosen spots. Suddenly, the young man asks if she's already worked as an actress besides modeling, leaving the girl flushed and startled. He points out that she always seemed to have a natural knack for acting, but the girl stammers without really knowing how to explain the situation. She averts her gaze and murmurs shyly that it's a somewhat embarrassing and awkward thing to bring up out of the blue. Though embarrassed, she admits, cheeks burning, that she once did something very close to acting in the past. Upon hearing that cryptic reply, the protagonist's eyes snap open, and he lingers thoughtfully over his friend's unexpected confession. A cold sweat breaks across his skin as odd images flash through his mind, thinking that the serious tone of the conversation could signal some strange secret. He ponders that none of the original work's heroines would have a dark background, but decides it's better to investigate before altering the story. Changing the subject quickly, the girl yanks his arm and reminds him they still have 3 whole sports clubs to visit today. Seeing how embarrassed she got from the previous conversation, the protagonist decides it's best not to press the issue any further. He suggests they start with the kendo club, and the girl eagerly agrees, telling him to simply follow her step. Upon arriving, they run into a large group of students murmuring anxiously as they wait at the training hall's entrance. The moment the young man appears, panic seizes the crowd, which screams, warning everyone of the dreaded protagonist's arrival. The students whisper, frightened, that he's already destroyed several clubs today and wonder if his plan is to dominate the entire school. A student with a microphone, trembling, confesses to her friend that she's too scared to even get close and interview him. Rika emerges, imposing, and introduces herself as the representative of Yo-sun, warning warning that any interview, it must be dealt with directly by her. A firm footfall echoes through the hall, drawing the protagonist, who feels a strong presence closing in quickly. Yukika strides in, imposing, and accuses the youth of using the trials as a cheap excuse to terrorize the school's sports club. She draws her sword and solemnly warns that her streak of destruction will end right here under the supervision of the Kendo Club. Students cheer in admiration, seeing the captain never flinch even for a second in the face of Yu Sounsen's intimidating presence. He explains he came solely out of interest in the club and politely asks to be shown how the admission trial worked. The captain flashes a defiant smile and remarks she likes people who display as much confidence as the young man does. She positions her as much confidence as the young man shows. She places her gear on her shoulder with firm resolve and announces that today's trial rules are extremely simple. She warns that whoever lands the first clean strike wins, revealing that she herself will be his opponent, and orders him into the training hall. A student in the stands buzzes with excitement as he sees the showdown epic between that human powerhouse and the captain finally about to begin. The crowd shouts, urging the veteran to finish him off, while others comment they never expected to see a show so good for free. Yo soon feels a bead of sweat on his forehead as he realizes the entire school is treating him like the ultimate final villain. Suddenly, the captain lets out a thunderous shout, demanding absolute silence from everyone watching. The whole bleacher falls silent in an instant, frightened by the authority and fury in the veteran Kendo Club captain's voice, who sternly warns that this is a dispute individual between her and Yu Tsun, forbidding the entry of any person not belonging to the training area. With a threatening glare, she vows that if anyone tries to breach the practice site, they will have to face her in a first-round combat. Terrified of angering the captain, the students, they retreat in absolute silence and decide to obey her orders without protest. Riko whispers to the protagonist that this captain seems far stronger than the other club leaders they've faced before, watching the opponent's intimidating stance. The young man nods silently in agreement with the spot-on comment from his blonde friend Yu Sung, feeling that the energy radiating from Yukiko is overwhelming, realizing that the Kendo Club captain really isn't a joke. The protagonist tells Rika to wait outside, and she instantly agrees to avoid a scolding from the captain. Yukiko assumes her combat stance and sneers, asking if he's sure he won't need any protective armor. Yaosun replies that he doubts they have armor his size, and the captain decides not to wear hers either to keep the fight fair. The protagonist accepts the challenge but makes it clear he won't take responsibility if she ends up getting hurt during the bout. The captain finds the warning amusing and mocks him, saying the young man says the funniest things she's ever heard. She coldly warns him that he won't even manage to touch her school uniform and orders him to gear up for a real fight. She lunges forward with speed, delivering a quick strike, but the protagonist blocks the attack with precision and ease as they trade rapid blows. She admits that for an ordinary street thug, the young man possesses fairly decent combat skills. However, she adds that he's only someone who trained a little, which means nothing against a true martial artist. With swift, precise movements, she circles him, searching for an opening to end the dispute once and for all. She lands a heavy blow that sends Yo Sunk's wooden sword flying far, leaving the young man completely disarmed in the middle of the arena. Confident of victory, she smiles and calls him naive for falling so easily into a simple sword disarm trick. Without wasting a second, she rushes forward at full speed to deliver the decisive finishing blow. In an incredible move, Yu Sung simply reaches back and catches his falling sword mid-air without even looking at it. She holds the weapon firmly aloft and counters, forcing the captain to stumble back quickly to evade the sudden strike. Panting and terrified, she assumes her stance again, trying to grasp the absurd pressure emanating from the protagonist. She realizes that if she'd taken even a second longer to dodge his counterattack, things would have gone terribly wrong. The young woman internally admits she underestimated him and knows that dragging the fight out will only bring serious trouble and drawback. She decides to channel all her spiritual energy and vows to end the dispute in a single move, charging forward, shouting that this is the end, and unleashes her clan's secret technique, propelling a devastating force at him. A blinding flash erupts as the secret technique slams directly into the protagonist at the center of the arena. Yet the one who takes the brutal hit is the captain herself, letting out a pained gasp as his counterstrike lands. She can't comprehend how he managed to withstand and shatter the Fuma clan's secret art, something no one has ever done. The girl recalls her own arrogance moments earlier, when she was absolutely certain she would win the fight with ease, but that confident pose crumbles as she's struck full force and hurled far away with extreme violence. As she falls backward, utterly stunned, she wonders what just hit her with such power and aggression in the battle. The captain reflects mid-fall that she felt no hostile intent coming from him, which makes the whole situation all the more strange. Then she notices notices something odd when she looks at her own hand and lets out a gasp at the condition of her gear. Yukika is left in total shock by the sudden discovery, and she begins to fear what really happened in that instant. And meanwhile, the protagonist deactivates the muscle boost he used in the fight and thinks to himself about how the technique works. The next morning, the students in classroom 2B murmur about rumors that Yusun defeated every sports club yesterday. One girl whispers that the kendo club took the worst hit and that Captain Yukika and other members ended up in the hospital. They mutter that he did all that to dominate the school and wonder if the kid has now become the supreme leader of the entire academy. Listening from his seat, the kid laments the rumor and admits he never imagined his strength would cause such a huge misunderstanding. Upon seeing Ryuji chatting cheerfully, the protagonist feels relieved to notice that the original boy of the story hasn't changed at all with him. Rika arrives beaming to wish him good morning, making the kid think that every day he should just keep living his own life in peace. Suddenly, a red-haired girl storms into the classroom, pointing a finger and shouting furiously, ordering Ryuji to leave immediately. The students whisper in fear, trying to figure out who she is, and soon discover she's Karen, a member of the kendo club. Quite confused and not understanding anything, Ryuji politely asks who she is and why she's looking for him this way. Karen accuses him of cowardly assaulting the club's new recruits and says she visited them in the hospital, where the whole truth was revealed. Ryuji tries to defend himself, saying it's a misunderstanding, but the girl gets even more enraged while Yu Sung watches from afar. At that moment, Maya rushes in front of the two, demanding calm to explain what really happened. Infuriating Karen even more, Maya firmly reveals that the real culprits behind all the confusion are precisely the club's own first-year members. She recounts that yesterday the newcomers forced her into a dark alley, and that she was only saved by the force into a dark alley, and that she was only saved because Ryuji stepped in to protect her. With a dead serious stare, Maya asks whether, even knowing all this, she still has the nerve to pin everything on Ryuji. She orders the redhead to go back and reprimand the newcomers, leaving Karen utterly embarrassed as she realizes she made a terrible mistake. Maya, arms crossed, confirms the blame is Ryuji's, but the first-year club members who messed up. Seeing the colossal misunderstanding and that she blamed the wrong person, the redhead starts blushing furiously out of embarrassment before everyone. Instead of apologizing, she points at the boy and, flushed with shame, shouts, ordering him to become her boyfriend right this instant. Ryuji is left completely frozen, and in shock upon hearing the girl, he proclaims aloud that he'll be the happiest man alive. Maya's eyes stay wide open, surrounded by question marks, unable to process the bizarre turn the conversation has taken. The other students in the classroom start murmuring non-stop, while the redhead holds Ryoshi's arm under the tense gaze of all their classmates. Flushed with jealousy and anger, Maya shouts at the top of her lungs that it's all a lie and can't be real. Yaosunga follows, looking terrified, thinking to himself how brutal the world of romantic comedies can be with those confessions. Meanwhile, Rika's cheeks turn rosy and she lets out a tiny squeal of excitement at witnessing that romance-worthy scene, like something out of a movie. She finds Karen. He's incredibly cool for having such attitude and the guts to spill his feelings so bluntly. Meanwhile, in another corner of the classroom, a group of boys starts whispering and debating which girl Ryuji will end up choosing. One of them bets that sweet Maya is the best pick, praising the sweetness of his childhood friend and her slender figure. Another guy disagrees, saying the best choice is the tough girl who scares everyone but becomes utterly gentle with the one she loved. Watching the chatter around him, the protagonist notes that the students remain wildly excited. Buzzing about the big gossip, he recalls the comic dramatic scene with the redhead pointing a finger and demanding Ryuji become her boyfriend in front of the whole crowd. He reflects that the girl had a lot of nerve to say all that out loud at the exact moment when everyone were watching intently. Then he catches Yo-sun's attention with a question, and the boy turns, confused, to hear what his blonde friend has to say. He asks with a mischievous, curious look, who does he think Ryuji will end up dating after all this chaos? The protagonist answers honestly that he has no clue, prompting the girl to whine petulantly, calling him boring. He thinks to himself that, if the original story stays true, Ryuji will end up married to his beloved childhood friend. Maya Rika lets out a mysterious giggle and, confidently, declares she knows exactly who will be chosen to go out with Ryuji. Winking confidently, no additional tech. He says that in a contentious relationship. Thus, Ryuji will undoubtedly end up choosing to go out with Karen. You claim that will happen as long as she herself is the one giving love advice to the redhead, leaving Yuzun confused. He remarks that she seems very confident about love advice, and the girl proudly declares herself an expert on the matter. Rika boasts that people line up to hear her wise counsel, but the young man thinks that Ryuji wouldn't even manage to understand her. She mutters irritably, saying saying she knows just how talented she is at it, while Yaosung doesn't grasp the reason for so much enthusiasm on his part. Rika makes a sweet face and silently wishes the young man would give her the same attention, leaving the protagonist quite confused. He stammers, unsure how to respond, feeling a little embarrassed under the bright, focused gaze of the blonde aimed at him later. As he walks through the empty classroom, the young man spots the redhead Karen in the distance, arms crossed, perched atop one of the desks. He asks his classmate Kong what the redhead is doing in their classroom, and the friend reveals she's insisting on meeting Ryuji on Saturday. The friend explains she wants to treat the blonde guy to a meal as a sincere apology for the earlier misunderstanding. The protagonist notes that dining together over the weekend is basically a romantic date, and the classmate fully agrees. The friend leans in to share a secret rumor, revealing that he heard she is the daughter of a very powerful figure in the region, whispering that rumors say Karen is the daughter of the great leader of the infamous and dangerous criminal organization, Daozai Kyusung. He asks, surprised, if that group is the mafia, and the classmate confirms, saying they're one of the largest syndicates in the singing region. The protagonist reacts with total coolness, making his friend complain that he doesn't seem the slightest bit impressed by the alarming story. Yo-sung points out that even if it's true, she did nothing against them, so nothing changes in his daily school routine daily. Admired for that sheer bravery and coolness, the companion says it makes him want to call him boss, but the kid asks him to stop the act. Still, the protagonist muses that they're already inside a comic book world, so an absurd rumor like that could actually be real. Suddenly, the redhead leaps up and shouts at the blonde, abruptly cutting Yo-sung's thoughts about her life. She snaps at Ryuji about the lunch date, demanding an apology, and the protagonist thinks that's the blonde's problem, not his. Seeing the redhead's relentless push, Maya roars with pure rage and jealousy, about to explode in the school hallway. She yells, ordering her to stop as she sees Ryuji uncomfortable, but Karen spins furiously, claiming she has nothing to do with it. Some boys around them whine with envy over Ryuji, having girls fighting over him while the protagonist watches the odd scene the next morning. The school gossip spreads with great force through the academy's corridors about the two girls. The students comment that, after all, Maya and Karen had a real showdown head-on because of the blonde Murmurin's affection. The redhead pressured Ryuji, insisting he would definitely have lunch with her that weekend, no matter what. Ryuji shows up with comical tears in his eyes, feeling cornered and silently begging for a way out of the mess. In the cafeteria, Rika asks Yo-sung what his plans are for the upcoming long holiday, the famous Golden Week. He replies he'll just help out at his family's restaurant, and she praises him with a smile, calling him an excellent son. Suddenly, she asks if he'd like to visit her house if he has free time, leaving the protagonist completely surprised. She explains she has an enormous stash of comics over there, and the young man is instantly intrigued, asking how big her collection is. Rika cheerfully reveals that her father's collection is so massive it could fill an entire bookstore whole, leaving the young man quite impressed. Yo-sung accepts the invitation and promises to call as soon as he can, while the girl tells him to let her know at any moment so she can talk to her father, Rika. She takes a satisfying bite of her rice roll and begins to thoughtfully reflect on something she noticed. Just now, the young man remarked that she's incredibly slender, yet she eats far more than she looks like, prompting the girl to reply that that's just normal for her. She explains she needs a solid lunch to avoid cravings later, laughing that she never puts on weight no matter what. With a mischievous grin, she reveals that everything she devours goes straight to her asset, making her beam with pride. Yo-sung is left completely flustered and flushed by the bold comment repeating her words, unsure how to react. She feigns offended humor, calling him a tease, while the protagonist, horrified, realizes he's fallen straight into her trap. Suddenly, Rika lets out a gasp of sheer surprise when the name Tokyo is dropped during the conversation with red-haired Karen, right there at the table. The blonde instantly sees that this is the perfect chance to put her advice-giving skills to work and help her new companion, and she takes the initiative, drawing the redhead's attention by name, and asks to confirm whether she's really Toho Karen of the Kendo Club. The redhead watches her confused, asking who she is, and the blonde introduces herself with utmost courtesy as Kishimoto Rika. Rika says she's noticed she seemed worried lately, and she offers to help, leaving Karen stunned as she recognizes the blonde's famous name, stammering in surprise. The redhead points a finger at her, unable to believe she's standing before such a well-known person at school. Karen, flushed with embarrassment, admits she's heard she's a wizard with love advice, leaving Yusun stunned to discover the rumor was true. He asks how the blonde knew about his problems, and Rika replies it would be impossible not to notice since she's always tailing Ryuji. Panicking, fearing others might overhear, the redhead darts to cover Rika's mouth and orders her to keep it down in the cafeteria. Rika pulls her hand away with a sweet smile, noting the moment was perfect because she too was eager to talk to her new friend. The redhead averts her gaze, cheeks flushed, timidly accepting the offer of much-needed help with her love woes. As he walks home later, Yo-sung muses to himself how much Rika seems to be enjoying the whole affair. He recalls the blonde scheduling a serious meeting with everyone after class, leaving the kid worried about being roped into the date. He notes the original story was supposed to focus on Ryuji's love dispute, yet Rika's overeager urge to help everyone feels off. Deciding to stop overthinking, the protagonist steps into the conditioning center to focus solely on today's heavy workout. As he enters the weight room, he runs into patrons pushing themselves to the limit, letting out shouts of pure determination. The young man wonders why the place is so noisy today, when suddenly a familiar female voice calls his name from behind. He spins around, stunned, remarking on the uncanny coincidence of running into her, unable to believe who stands before him. It's Captain Yukika, dressed in sleek, street-ready casual, watching him with a rather serious and firm. He asks, surprised, if that girl in workout clothes is indeed, she really is the kendo club captain we faced yesterday. She sneers, saying the kendo club drills alone weren't enough for her training, and she never expected to run into him here as well. He lets out a hollow chuckle and thinks, finally, I get why all the guys are so fired up about training. She readies herself to start the drills, while the protagonist notes in his mind that, despite her rough edge, the captain is truly stunning. He mentions he didn't know she lived in the neighborhood, and she, arms crossed, says she just moved in. The lively gym director, overhearing them, bursts out from behind, declaring that it's absolutely perfect. The muscular director named Yuhiro grins brightly and orders the protagonist to be in charge of showing the new girl around the facilities. He says that since they're schoolmates, it'll be far more comfortable training together than with an older guy, leaving the protagonist utterly embarrassed. The director whispers mischievously in his ear that he thinks the girl signed up just because she likes him, wishing him good luck in the romance. The director walks away, saying she'll just observe on her first day, leaving the boy sighing, certain the man got everything backward. A thunderous sound. A thunderous clang reverberates through the gym as a barbell loaded with massive weight plates is set for the start of the training. It is positioned, ready for the beginning of the workout. The director suggests kicking off light with 220 kilos. Yukika flinches, finding that opening load absurdly heavy and exaggerated. He tells her not to worry, asserting he's been at this for 20 years and has never seen a powerhouse with as much raw strength as Yu-sung, the young man, and holds the iron bar steady with both hands, tightening his muscular leg, channeling all his power into the lift. With a single, precise motion and barely any effort, he hoists the massive weight off the ground, completing the squat flawlessly. The director praises the ease of the movement and orders the weight cranked up to 270 kilos, leaving the club captain even more horrified. The young man finishes the sequence calmly, and the girl is left gaping as she notices he completed 5 full sets of that brutal weight. The director proudly reinforces that the kid is a true powerhouse, while the girl thinks that such training heavy is almost self-torture. She tremulously acknowledges that absurd physique doesn't belong to an ordinary student and realizes he is the legendary anomaly she'd heard rumors about. With eyes shining amid the mystic energy surrounding him, she concludes with absolute certainty that the young man possesses the legendary extreme yang physique. She fixes a serious gaze on him, fully convinced that such an extraordinary body could only belong to a true warrior. She recalls that legend says such a mystic physical constitution, with the vitality of 100 men, belonged only to the great heroes of historic myth. Is she sure of that? She faced him directly in combat and knows well that such colossal strength isn't earned merely by gym workout. Confronted with this crucial discovery, she decides the best course now is to report everything she uncovered to that mysterious figure. The next day, they arrive in front of a grand, traditional mansion. A Japanese woman who belongs to Karen's family. Upon entering, several men in suits bow respectfully, giving her a welcome to the young boss Karen, confirming the rumors. Yusun stays thoughtful upon seeing that her family is truly mafia and wonders why Rika doesn't seem at all surprised. He reflects that he'll never get used to these oddities of the new world when, suddenly, a man with a scar on his face watches him, stunned. The scarred man is completely terrified by the protagonist's intimidating physique and horrified asks himself, what kind of monster is that? He points a finger, accusing Yo-sun of being an enemy spy and orders Karen to step back immediately for safety. Karen scolds him, saying they came to help, but the subordinate insists that dangerous-looking face doesn't belong to an ordinary student. The boss of the subordinates lowers his head, sincerely apologizing for his boy's rude and disrespectful behavior. Yo-sung calmly replies that everything's fine and he's become quite used to being misread by the crowd out there. He says he appreciates the invitation but doubts it will help much much with romantic advice, yet the blonde insists her opinion matters. Rika cheerfully announces they'll start teaching the redhead how to cook, claiming a home-cooked meal is perfect for expressing feelings. She strikes a sweet pose with her hands and urges her friend to fully trust Rika's infallible advice. The great love guru Yu Sung watches her with a huge bead of sweat on his forehead, wondering how she can say such cringe-worthy things about herself without feeling embarrassed. Ignoring the young man, the two girls extend animated hands and celebrate the official start of this entertaining cooking class in the kitchen. After some time and effort, the redhead finally finishes the meal and proudly presents her very first decorated dish. She lights up holding her brand new, completely handmade lunchbox, while the blonde cheers her on, clapping with joy. Yet minutes earlier, the whole process had been a total disaster, the food catching fire completely because of the exaggerated high flame that Karen Yuzoyu's son, relieved, says the road to this point was extremely difficult, and she notes how cooking in romantic comedies can be disastrous. Smelling the pleasant aroma, the young man admits he's still hungry and offers to whip up something tasty right away. He throws on an apron with swagger, looks confidently at the girls, and tells them to leave the cooking entirely in his hands. The young man displays his incredible chef skills, mastering the high flame with precision, astonishing the girls on the spot. Rika and Karen stare wide-eyed, completely amazed watching the technique. Spectacular cooking that the protagonist showcases. He finishes the dish with mastery and serves a golden-looking fried rice, irresistible and looking extremely delicious. They take the first spoonful and begin to extremely delicious. They take the first spoonful and start eating quickly, amazed by the flavor spectacular and surprising of that fast food. Rika asks, surprised, since when have you been cooking so well? And he explains that he started practicing in his first year by making his own lunchboxes. He recalls that at the beginning, his mother would wake up at dawn to cook, and he felt sorry seeing the fatigue on her face every morning. He says he was clumsy at first, and Rika begins to weep, moved by his caring attitude in helping his hardworking mother. Karen asks who makes Rika's lunchboxes, and the blonde proudly replies that her mother makes everything with love. Making Yusa and Rika laugh, she suddenly claps on the table, shouting aloud that she finally remembered a crucial detail to aid the redhead's romance. She pulls out a gift package decorated with a pink ribbon and excitedly reveals that she bought makeup products essential for her friend. She hands over the gift, saying she wrote a basic skincare routine, leaving the shy redhead very grateful and embarrassed. The blonde suggests going shopping for new clothes once she learns to apply makeup, leaving the protagonist fearful about the shopping plan. Rika studies her new friend's wardrobe and thoughtfully notes that the everyday look she wears at school is a bit dated. She bluntly says Karen's style resembles that of an old geezer, launching a painful jab at the poor redhead Yu Sung's aesthetic pride. She thinks the blonde is overly sincere, while Karen takes the reality check and vows to work hard to land the date. Rika celebrates her resolve and orders the protagonist to wait in the kitchen as the two are about to start the makeup session right away. He complains about having to wait alone at the table, but the blonde points out that watching a woman's transformation is practically a crime. Rika pulls her upbeat friend toward the room, leaving the protagonist sitting alone at the table, arms folded waiting patiently. He wears a massive doubtful expression, remembering that she had just said his male opinion would be crucial to the plan. Later that night, the two friends walk home through the bustling street, and the girl cheerfully remarked that the day was entertaining. She says, smiling, adding that she really hopes Karen can achieve her big dream of a perfect romantic date with Ryuji on Saturday. The protagonist asks to stop at a convenience store to buy a comic book magazine, and the girl darts off excitedly, saying she wants to come too. She asks, surprised, if he buys the magazine every week, and recalls that her father always says anyone who loves reading comic can't be bad. Rika confirms, laughing, that she also buys it weekly, prompting the protagonist to ask sarcastically if that makes him a good person. She pauses, looks him straight in the eyes, and replies very tenderly and sincerely that he is indeed an excellent person. She explains she spent the whole day working in the kitchen to help with Karen's plan, and that anyone who does that for others is amazing. With flushed cheeks and a shy, sweet smile, the girl finishes her sentence, warmly reaffirming that he's a good man. Embarrassed by the romantic atmosphere, she shouts that it's getting late, darts to the register to pay, and rushes off. The protagonist watches her sprint away, wondering with a huge, puzzled look if she just had a sudden stomach upset out of nowhere. The next day, classes resume normally at the academy, and all the students return to their rooms to start another week. The students begin murmuring in the hallways, noticing something very unusual happening out there. A stunning red-haired girl walks by, drawing everyone's attention, and they comment on how beautiful she looks. Everyone is surprised to realize that this mysterious, charming girl is entering classroom 2B. With a firm, decisive gesture, she extends an an envelope mysteriously sealed with dark wax. Karen hands the challenge letter to Sakamoto Ryuji and says they'll go out together next weekend. Ryuji is completely bewildered, not recognizing her, leaving Karen annoyed, her cheeks flushed. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the bustling, famous Shibuya district. Rika praises Karen's bold attitude at school, while the film Hoha thanks shyly and asks to be called by her name. Rika celebrates animatedly and suggests they use cute nicknames, while Yo-soon just watches them in silence. Upon entering the women's clothing section, Yo-soon feels like she's stepped into an entirely different world. She remembers that Karen asked for help picking an outfit for the date, and Rika insisted on dragging him along. Rika is soon dazzled by a very cute outfit displayed in the window of a high-end shop. The blonde grabs Karen's hand and pulls her hurriedly inside. Eager to make her try on several looks, Rika begins piling hooks onto the red-haired girl's arm. Choosing a pile of outfits she thinks are cute, the blonde shoves Karen into the fitting room to try on the first look. Karen complains that girly styles don't suit her, but Rika decides to step into the booth to give her a hand. Rika moves closer to fit the clothes onto Karen's frame, telling her to relax and leave everything in her hands, listening strange noises and Karen's complaints coming from inside. Yo-sung feels utterly embarrassed. Karen clutches the skirt's hem with trembling hands, feeling extremely mortified by the new look. She exits the fitting room wearing a very short, heavily decorated skirt, leaving her completely uncomfortable. Rika asks her friend's opinion, and Yo-sung smiles, honestly praising that the outfit suits her perfectly. The young man thinks to himself that the saying about clothes changing a person is indeed the purest truth. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the imposing mansion of the organization, which is the home of Karen's family. Inside the residence, the members of the criminal. They are gathered around a massive conference table. There sits the sixth leader of the organization, Tajanato, with an extremely serious expression. Known for his feared reputation, the leader begins to speak about Karen Klava's recent moves. A sharp knife pressed firmly on the table, revealing that his daughter finally has found a boy she likes. The subordinates are left in shock by the revelation, while the boss laments not knowing who the daring boy is. He declares, irritated, that he won't hand his beloved daughter over to just anyone and calls his assistant, Sento Neato. He asks to confirm whether the name of the young man his daughter is interested in is truly Sakamoto. The assistant confirms and adds that the young man is named Sakamoto Ryuji and attends the same school as Karen. He recounts that the day before, the girl asked to go to a beauty salon and he personally handled her security. Furthermore, he shows that new charges have appeared on her credit card at several clothing stores in the mall. Piecing together all the clues, the assistant concludes that the girl is planning a romantic date this weekend. The jealous father completely loses control and starts shouting in fury about the name Sakamoto throughout the office, still trembling with anger. The leader orders all members who are free this weekend to convene. He declares that the group's mission will be to shadow the date and ensure the boy doesn't attempt any misstep. The leader orders all members who are free this weekend to convene. He declares that the group's mission will be to shadow the date and ensure the boy doesn't attempt any misstep. All the men nod loudly, gearing up to launch that oddly specific espionage mission back to the main group. They're now holed up in a burger joint, taking a breather and grabbing a bite. Rika leans her head on the table, dramatically whining that she's utterly exhausted after all that shopping. Even though she claims she doesn't have the strength to even chew, the blonde keeps shoveling fries nonstop. Karen sincerely thanks her for the invaluable help, and Rika replies cheerfully that that's what friends are for. The blonde assures she also had a blast shopping and will always be there to back her friend up, no matter what. Karen asks if a single order will even satisfy Yo-soon's appetite and offers to foot the bill for more food. She gently insists, saying covering the meal is the least she can do for all the help he gave her. The protagonist bites into his burger and thinks that, despite her tough reputation, the redhead is actually a very attentive girl. Karen catches his gaze and asks if something's on his face, prompting the young man to joke that there's sauce there. Karen frantically wipes her cheek, but Yo-sung laughs, saying it was a prank, and asks about the date plans. She replies confidently that the basic itinerary will be to hit a cafe, then the movies, and finish with dinner. Hearing Karen's simple plans, Rika shouts, pointing out that her friend is being way too naive about love. Rika argues that a run-of-the-mill date won't impress and suggests a phone-based alternative to replace the cinema. The redhead glances at her friend's phone screen and is stunned to see that the suggestion is taking him to an aquarium. With a dreamy look, the blonde describes the shimmering waters, the colorful fish, and the coral reefs gently dancing. She finishes by saying the soft lighting is perfect for the two of them to whisper and grow even closer. Karen fully agrees with the romance expert, while Yo-soon just sighs wearily at all that drama when it's time to say goodbye. Rika wishes him good luck for the big day and congratulates her friend on the effort she put into the preparation. preparations. Karen thanks them from afar for the support and says goodbye as the two friends wave back before leaving. The two continue walking down the street while the blonde wears a big, happy smile etched on her face. Suddenly, Rika asks what he's doing tomorrow, and the young man replies that he plans to just read comics at home. Rika invites him to spy on Karen's date, leaving the protagonist outraged at losing his weekend rest. She insists they must guarantee their friend's happiness, forcing Yo-sung to surrender and accept the idea even though he's not keen. Rika cheerfully slaps hands with him, officially sealing the spy pair for the next day. On the day of the date, Karen's father shows up disguised with dark sunglasses and a flashy wig that draws curious glances on the street. He positions himself at the agreed spot, believing it's the exact meeting point where his daughter will have her first outing. Ryuji finally arrives running and politely apologizes for the slight delay upon finding young Karen. He smiles gently and tells her not to worry, saying she just arrived as well. The guy shyly compliments her appearance, making the redhead's heart race with excitement. In that instant, she thanks him, extremely bashful, as the two begin to walk side by side down the busy sidewalk. The redhead suggests starting the stroll with he to plan the day, and the young man agrees quickly with the idea. Karen takes the lead, animated, unaware that a mysterious hooded figure watches them closely from afar. Yo-sung and Rika hide behind a pillar, wearing glasses and a hood to spy on the couple unnoticed. The blonde darts off to keep close on the couple's trail, forcing the protagonist to rush after her. As the pair walks calmly heading toward the cafe, the disguised subordinates trail him just behind, eyes scowling. Toyo Naoto watches the two from a distance and begins to tremble with pure jealousy at seeing the boy so close to his cherished daughter. The leader erupts in fury, complaining about the youngster's 5-minute tardiness, while his aide tries to rein him in. The aide whispers, warning that the people around are finding the group highly suspicious because of their blunders. He explains that moving as a pack of 9 draws too much attention and suggests they split into espionage pairs. The boss agrees with the plan and orders everyone to separate immediately to continue the mission discreetly. The scene then shifts focus to the entrance of a cozy establishment that doubles as a bookstore and cafe. A massive dessert topped with strawberries, ice cream, and whipped cream is served at the table, looking absolutely delicious. Rika snaps super enthusiastic photos of her gigantic treat, ignoring the fact that they were supposed to be just spying. She teases her friend, asking if he couldn't finish that sweet on his own, leaving him bewildered. Looking around, the protagonist starts to sense a strange, suspicious atmosphere coming from the other tables. Several men in suits and dark glasses begin to fill the space, making the vibe incredibly tense and crowded. Yo-sung eyes those men warily, convinced each of them has a deep tie to Karen's family, and he studies them intently. His gaze locks onto a tall guy with long, fiery red hair, radiating a fierce aura. The young man realizes that, despite the comically ridiculous wig, the man's features are an exact match for Karen's protective father. Shifting his focus to his phone, Yo-sung learns that the aquarium they're heading to also has a dolphin exhibit. At the neighboring table, Karen chirps excitedly that she can't wait to see the dolphins first, and Ryoshi nods with a gentle smile. The redhead flashes a radiant, pure joy smile, already feeling how entertaining the day will be. Yo-sung scans the crowd of stacked buys and predicts his friend's date will be a real trial. Soon, the bustling Shibuya subway station's announcement chimes echo through the platform as the trains prepare to depart and the doors begin to close. The young man pulls Rika close, shielding her from the surging crowd. She blushes fiercely as his chest presses against her, while passengers keep streaming into the car. The blonde tries to stay composed despite the sudden closeness, and the protagonist, startled by the sheer number of commuters, looks down to check on her, causing her to flinch when his gaze meets hers. He gently urges her to hold on just a little longer, her heart pounding wildly. As soon as the doors swing open, a torrent of people begins to surge, pushing everyone out of the carriage, fearing they could lose the couple amid the crowd. The young man grips the blonde's hand tightly. He steers her firmly through the packed station, ensuring the two stay on course with their mission without getting lost. He exhales in relief as they finally clear the jam-packed subway station beside his wealthy friend, shyly asking her to let go of his hand, leaving him utterly embarrassed and apologetic. The two slowly pull their hands apart, creating a slightly tense, silent atmosphere between them. In that moment of flushed cheek, the blonde whispers, begging him to be a bit gentler next time. The Yuan Kai protagonist nods sheepishly, yet he's left wondering what she meant by next time. They lose sight of the green signal, and Rika panics as she realizes they've lost the couple. Yun calms his friend, reminding her their final destination is the aquarium and suggesting they head straight there to find them. Right behind them, members of the criminal organization grumble about the massive crowd. As they eavesdrop on the men's chatter about city traffic, Yaun glances sideways, finding them extremely suspicious. The young man suddenly recalls recalls spotting those same figures prowling near Karen's sprawling mansion. He moves with extreme caution, pulling his hood down to keep his face hidden. The boss spots him and takes aim, but the Lieutenant Sento quickly identifies the youth as Karen's close friend. The aide remembers those kids helped the girl with the date preparations and that their build gives them away. The mob boss grasps the situation, realizing the youngsters are only there out of concern for their friend's date. Having also lost sight of Karen, the boss decides the group's best move is to shadow the two youth. With a steely glance, the leader orders everyone to tail the spy pair closely. Meanwhile, the couple finally reaches the Grand Aquarium's main entrance, cheering with joy. The boy invites the redhead inside, oblivious to two injured, bandaged students. They watch from a distance on the street. The two wounded troublemakers glance at each other, surprised to spot the young couple strolling right in front of them. The guy with the neck guard points toward the entrance and asks if the guy walking there isn't really Sakamoto. They confirm his identity and flare up with rage when they see that the one who kicked them out of the club is on a date. With utterly grim and furious look, the two crooks vow to get revenge on the kid at any cost. Inside the venue, the protagonist and the blonde press on with their mission, keeping the couple under surveillance from the hallway corners. Even with the ambient lighting dim and soft, making visibility tough, the couple's happiness shines through. Yo soon narrows his gaze on the scene and spots a crucial detail he can state with absolute certainty. Their date is unfolding in an incredibly better and more harmonious way than the young man had anticipated. Seeing his friend's plan succeed, the protagonist wonders if there's any point in continuing to spy. Later, the scene shifts to the beautiful, sun-drenched Minami-Kebukuro Park, where a crowd enjoys the day. Rika opens a perfectly packed lunchbox, eyes sparkling. Seeing the delicious rice rolls and sushi pieces, Yu-sung explains she's prepared a full feast for their picnic so they can eat well while keeping an eye on the two rich with rope cheerfully. And she takes a big, tasty bite of the first piece, praising her friend's cooking. A little further on, the couple settles onto a blanket on the grass to enjoy their lunch. As the spies watch, Karen becomes extremely tense, eyes wide open. When she offers the lunchbox she's prepared with such care, Young understands her nervousness, recalling that it's the first time the redhead has cooked for someone she liked. He remembers Karen's messages asking for cooking advice and how she trained day and night without stopping for 3 days. Upon opening the vento, Ryuji is blown away by its marvelous appearance and the exquisite details of the entire meal. Karen clumsily asks him to eat a lot, and the guy eagerly starts by taking a rice roll. The young man bites into the rice roll hungrily, while the redhead watches him intently in a painful silence. Upon hearing the sincere compliment that the food was excellent, Karen's face lights up with pure joy and relief. Excited by the first success, she grabs a piece of chicken and tries to feed it into the young man's mouth, leaving him a bit startled. With flushed cheeks and a shy determination, she insists on feeding him directly without backing down an inch. Ryuji timidly accepts the food with his eyes closed, while the girl anxiously asks for his opinion on the taste. He gives an approving nod, praising the spectacular flavor of everything, leaving the young woman with flushed, joyful cheeks. As they watch the romantic atmosphere between the two friends at the picnic, Rika starts to wear a thoughtful, dreamy expression. The young man continues feeding Karen with the chopstick, creating a moment of deep camaraderie and affection between the pair. He smiles and says he's satisfied for the moment, showing just how much he loved all the effort she put into the lunch. Karen hides her reddened face in her hands and cries from so much happiness, seeing her romantic plan actually working. Rika remarks that everything is surprisingly going well, but suddenly begins to doubt whether her advice really helped. The blonde clasps her hands, eyes shining, and sighs that she'd also love to have a romantic date like this someday. Yo-sung points a finger at her, sarcastically recalling that she always proclaimed herself a great expert in matters of the heart. Rika confesses, embarrassed, that she's never actually dated anyone and learned everything she knows from reading romance comics. The young man sighs and says the couple is already getting ready to leave, suggesting they keep following them. Rika gets really angry at being ignored by him, loudly complaining that she's not being taken seriously on her topic. Meanwhile, Ryuji and Karen stroll calmly side by side through the park, chatting in a very pleasant atmosphere. Hidden behind a tree, the protagonist thinks the atmosphere between them is perfect for a confession. Suddenly, a loud commotion shatters the peace, putting the young man on edge. Instantly, Yusunki and Rika stare in shock as the two injured metro thugs show up to confront the couple. The ruffians flash malicious grins and claim they've been hunting the young man everywhere to settle the score. They taunt Ryuji in front of Karen, spinning lies that he's a total swindler who steals other guys' girls. Rika suggests calling the authorities, but Yo-sung prefers to wait and see if he'll need to intervene personally in case. The text continues with offensive provocations, saying she doesn't match the young man at all and that she only lives fighting in the mud. Ryuji erupts in fury at seeing seeing his friend humiliated and shouts for them to shut their mouth, defending Karen's honor with steel. The thug warns with a wicked grin that they didn't come alone, while a huge, threatening figure appears just behind. The two thugs, they breathe a sigh of relief as their heavy backup finally arrives to aid them in the fight. The hulking muscle man watches Ryuji with an arrogantly calm smile, declaring that he is the one who will subdue you alongside his comrades, the thugs. The thugs proudly present their leader Hayashi, describing him in an intimidating manner as a legend of street brawls. Ryuji desperately begs Karen to get out of there at once, but the redhead firmly refuses to leave him alone in danger. Hayashi loses patience with their exchange and orders them to stop the clowning around immediately with a completely cold stare. With a swift, brutal motion, the brute grips Karen's wrist hard, preventing her from pulling away. Startled, Hayashi lets out a mocking laugh and lecherously suggests she have fun with him instead of the other. Ryuji tries to move forward desperately to rescue his friend, but Hayashi easily blocks him and says he's just getting in the way. The brute delivers a savage punch to Ryuji's chest, sending the youngster directly to the ground with extreme force. Seeing the cowardice of the aggression, the protagonist feels a tremendous surge of courage and tells his friend to stay put while he handles the matter. Karen screams desperately for her wounded friend on the ground, while Hayashi holds her and continues smiling with utter mockery. The thug scoffs at the situation and says he's going to take the girl. While Ryuji lies sprawled on the ground trying to recover, he keeps spouting nonsense right up close to her face, oblivious to a massive, intimidating shadow that erupts right behind him. A chill of pure danger runs down his spine as the guy looks back, confused, when he comes face to face with the protagonist's looming presence. Without saying a word, the protagonist crushes the thug's wrist with such force it makes him scream in pain instantly. With extreme ease, he hurls the thug far down the sidewalk, leaving the other two thugs in total shock. With a lethal stare and surrounded by a dark, intimidating presence, he sternly warns them to get their filthy hands off his friend. The leader scrambles to his feet, frightened, and asks, trembling, where that unbelievably strong guy came from. Suddenly, Hayashi roars furiously, accusing the young man of launching a treacherous attack and challenges him to a clean, direct fight. From now on, the protagonist stands still, arms down and in total silence, displaying an imposing posture that scares the opponent. The guy tries to convince himself he was caught off guard and that the opponent is just an ordinary citizen who can land a few blows. Hidden in the park bushes, the organization's spies of the criminal organization watch the scene and wonder if they should intervene in the fight. Moments earlier, the mobsters ran, tired and out of breath, through the park, searching for the trail of the kids they had lost. The assistant explains that he lost sight of them for a moment after the picnic, but suddenly spots something happening ahead. They look in the indicated direction and witness the exact moment when the thug Hayashi is gripping Karen's wrist by force. The protective guardian bursts from among the foliage, spitting fire of rage upon seeing that ragged, roughly handling his beloved daughter. A subordinate suggests drawing the tools immediately to charge at the criminals, but the president orders them to wait upon noticing something unusual. He decides to hold back his men as the other hooded boy draws near to settle the matter. He orders everyone to keep a close eye on that youth's back, who begins to radiate an extremely powerful energy in the park. He watches his own hands and starts to tremble slightly as an incredibly suffocating pressure fills the air. He spits, his face showing fear, realizing he had already felt that same terrifying sensation earlier. The president recalls Ivan the Destroyer, the feared supreme leader of the Russian mafia of his era. He remembers the overwhelming fear he felt when confronting him in Japan was exactly the same as now. It is absolute terror caused by a true monster of incomparable, destructive power. The mobster is stunned to see that the same dark aura of a criminal leader emanates from an ordinary young student. With his gaze completely consumed by fury, the protagonist decides to cast aside the rules and act on his own, marching forward with firm step, fully intent on wiping out those troublemakers. He takes a protective stance and orders Karen to get Ryuji out of there immediately, seizing control of the situation. The redhead hesitates, worried, but the protagonist steadies her, assuring her with iron resolve that he would never lose to guys like that. Hayashi erupts in fury at being ignored and charges at the young man, screaming with pure hatred. The troublemaker throws a rapid barrage of punches, but the protagonist blocks and returns the blows without any difficulty. His allies cheer enthusiastically, believing the spectacular speed of their leader's strikes would be lethal. Hayashi finishes his combo confident, taunting his opponent, convinced he couldn't dodge a single jab. Yet the young man stands completely untouched and unmoving, sending a shock through the irritated aggressor, who, frightened by the youth's resistance, attempts a fresh, crushing punch with all his might. The blow lands squarely on the protagonist's face, creating a massive impact right before everyone present. Riko watches in desperation, screaming her friend's name frame, terrified that the blow might have left him badly injured. Karen and Ryuji also watch the scene, completely shocked to see the youth take that violent strike head-on. The protagonist doesn't even flinch, merely wiping a thin line of blood from his face, causing the bully to recoil, trembling with pure terror. With an extremely serious and intimidating, the youth warns that from now on, everything he does will be in self-defense. Hayashi stammers in panic as he sees the protagonist's fist shooting toward his face at breakneck speed. With a single devastating straight punch, the protagonist slams the bully's face with sheer, colossal force. The spectacular impact completely shatters the hulking brute's guard, sending him crashing backward with brutal force. He collapses unconscious on the grass after that single blow, leaving his henchmen utterly desperate and motionless. The youth believes that more than one strike would be excessive, so he poured all his power into that one decisive punch. The protagonist coldly remarks that the opponent was far too weak, leaving the troublemakers even more terrified. He steps forward with a grim stare and says they hurt his friends, asking if they know what that means. The cowards start wailing, threatening to call the police and their influential father, but the youth scoffs at the cheap threat. He grabs both troublemakers by the head with his hands firmly, saying he's going to straighten those wayward minds. He applies a crushing pressure that makes them scream in desperate pain and beg for forgiveness right there in the park. After giving the two cowards a solid lesson, the protagonist simply tosses them to one side of the grass with no effort. Completely defeated and trembling, they continue pleading on their knees for their lives in a pathetic manner. The young man coldly orders them to get out of there and never dare to show up in front of Toho Karen or Sakamoto Ryoshi again. The troublemakers nod desperately. They hoist their unconscious leader onto their shoulders and bolt as fast as they can. Rika rushes worried toward her friend and begs them to get out of there quickly before trouble erupts. The young man brushes off the wound on his face, but the blonde erupts in fury, demanding they head straight to the pharmacy right now. He agrees without protest, thinking to himself that this is the first time he's seen his friend so enraged. Meanwhile, the pair of friends sit on a park bench to talk once the whole mess is settled. The two spies watch from afar, noting the tense atmosphere between the couple, and decide to give them some privacy. Karen lowers her head, deeply sad, and apologizes sincerely, feeling guilty that he was attacked because of her. Ryuji smiles gently and apologizes as well, explaining that those guys were after him alone. After a brief, shy silence, the redhead summons the courage to tell the young man something of utmost importance, her cheeks flushed and eyes shining with emotion. Finally, she confesses that she likes him a lot. Ryuji is completely frozen, unable to react to his friend's sudden, sincere love confession. She sweetly completes her request, formally asking him to become her boyfriend from this day forward. The redhead clutches her hands together and repeats the plea, heart in hand, anxiously awaiting the young man's answer on the bench. However, the young man averts his gaze, his expression painfully uncomfortable and sad, casting a tense atmosphere over the air. He apologizes sincerely, revealing with regret that, unfortunately, he can't give her the answer she so desperately wants. He tries to justify himself, saying she's too good for him, but he has serious personal reasons for not being able to accept Karen. She asks, surprised by those reasons, and Ryuji reveals he made a marriage promise to a girl in his childhood. The young man explains, his gaze melancholy, that he must wait until he finds that mysterious person again. He concludes firmly that because of that old promise, he has no plans to date anyone else. Hearing that shatters Karen's heart completely. She sits in silence, head bowed, at a loss for words. She asks if he still cares for her that much, and Ryuji admits he's not sure, but recalls crying a lot when she moved away. Karen, still head down, asks if she was his first love, and the young man nods sadly in confirmation. The redhead suddenly stands, saying she understands his decision, promising to let go of her feelings cleanly. She forces a big smile and waves goodbye, saying they'll see each other at school and that she had a lot of fun on the date. Ryuji returns the gesture with a tender, understanding look, relieved to have spoken so honestly and maturely. As soon as he walks away from the bench, the girl quickens her pace and starts sprinting away. Rika cries heavily as she witnesses the sad scene, and Yoon kindly asks his friend to go home ahead without him. The boy surprises the blonde with the request, but he simply says he'll see her at school next week. Rika sighs softly and watches her friend walk away, understanding that probably he wants to help comfort the redhead. She remains thoughtful, noticing that the protagonist seemed to wear a very sad expression in his eyes as he ran off. Karen sits alone on a bench, crying, when suddenly Yo-sung's shoes stop right in front of her. He approaches with a very calm demeanor and asks her gently if she's alright at that moment. Seeing her friend there, the redhead can no longer hold back her emotions and erupts in tears of pure sadness and frustration. He tries to comfort her beside him, offering a handkerchief and commenting in a friendly tone that it's obvious she's not okay. He helps her wipe her face calmly, gently, urging her to take a deep breath and settle down to regain her strength, reminding her that they're friends. The girl repeats the word thoughtfully, feeling a huge relief knowing she finally has someone she can trust. She shocks the young man by revealing she already knew he and Rika had been spying on her date the whole time. The protagonist becomes extremely embarrassed and breaking into a cold sweat as he realizes they were terrible spies. That day, Karen gives a faint smile and says she understands they were only overly worried about her for having helped her from the very beginning. She apologizes wistfully for botching the plan, admitting she thought changing her style would be enough. The redhead sadly realizes there was never truly a place for her in her beloved's heart from the start. She squeezes her chest, crying, saying the pain of rejection is so intense it feels like it will drive her mad. She sobs that she's never felt such a deep ache in her whole life, leaving the protagonist silent beside her. The redhead erupts, pouring all her strength into tears as she loudly admits how much she truly loved her great friend. Yusun falls into thought, reflecting on how he once saw those people only as secondary characters of a manga. He remembers Rika and realizes that, at first, he also kept a polite, superficial distance with her. Deep down, he always drew a clear line, separating himself from those fictional comic book characters. He watches the girl's genuine suffering and wonders if anyone who feels such vivid pain can truly be called a character. With a determined look, the protagonist rises from the park bench, extends his hand, and asks her to stand. He points a finger at her, joking that if she stays lying there, they'll have to call the police for a disturbance. Upon hearing that completely random joke in the middle of her sobbing, the redhead can't hold back a faint, goofy laugh. She complains, finding it funny at this odd moment, and he smiles back at her, saying she looks much better when she laughs. The young man suddenly starts taking off his hooded sweatshirt, embarrassing the redhead as she sees his muscular back. He hands the warm sweatshirt to Karen, gently ordering her to put it on right away to warm up. The protagonist adjusts the hood on her head and, brimming with confidence, reveals that their next stop will be a fun karaoke. He gives her a gentle pat on the head, explaining he'll scream and sing until he drives all the sorrow from his heart. Using his massive sweatshirt, the girl darts right behind, trying to catch up while calling out to him apologetically. The redhead watches him walk ahead of her and thinks to herself how that young man is always so random and unpredictable. He gently pulls her by the wrist and she begins to reflect that those people around her, after all, are exactly like him. Smiling joyfully inside the warm sweatshirt, she realizes that everyone there are real humans with living feelings and emotion. Hidden, the mobsters watch the scene, relieved, and the president admits he's very happy that his daughter has a friend like that. The boss reflects maturely that in a world as hard and dangerous as theirs, good-hearted youths are rare. He smiles sideways behind his dark glasses, starting to see the protagonist with great respect and admiration. The mafia boss mentally detaches from the youngster, sincerely hoping their paths will cross again someday. At the karaoke, the redhead belts out the microphone with all her lungs. He orders the protagonist to bang the tambourine with far more vigor. Soon Yo Sung's turn to sing at karaoke arrives, and the tense young man watches as she eagerly jumps into Yo Sung's fourth number. Surprise. Seeing how a real guy's fourth song sounds, she asks if all boys stash so many gym gadgets in their rooms. He sheepishly admits that isn't really the case. The blonde soon spots heavy dumbbells scattered on the wooden floor. She tries to hoist one with all her strength, but it won't move, complaining it isn't made for humans. The protagonist explains the dumbbell is only half her weight, while wondering how he ended up with the girl in his room. He recalls that it all began as usual, with the two of them walking together to the subway after school. Mid-conversation, a loud, rumbling stomach growl interrupts. Suddenly, Yo Sung notices and asks straight up if his friend is hungry. The young man suggests stopping by his family's restaurant for a meal, and she cheerfully recalls that they own a business. Yo Sung agrees, thinking offering his friend a single meal won't be a problem. Right after, the two arrive at the pleasant, cozy restaurant of Yo Sung's family, Rika, and she begins devouring the dishes at a speed impressive, leaving the young man a bit stunned by her appetite. After taking a huge gulp from her soda can, the blonde sighs with extreme satisfaction. The girl praises the food, saying it was incredible, which leaves Yo Sung's mother extremely pleased with the compliment. The restaurant owner thanks him warmly and tells him to eat as much as he wants, promising to whip up even more dishes. The young man watches the scene in silence and notes that his mother really hit it off with Rika. Suddenly, the blonde gives his friend a hard pat on the back and invites him to head to the next destination soon. Still coughing from the scare, he asks, confused, "Where do you want to go so suddenly?" Rika winks mischievously and replies that the goal now is to visit her room, carrying a tray of drink. Yo Sung laments having been naive, thinking nothing out of the ordinary would happen. He opens the door, saying they can drink while they chat, but he's interrupted when he sees what she's doing to him. Rika is sitting, reading one of his romance mangas, and asks if he really likes that kind of reading. The girl says she didn't expect him to like that style, while the young man thinks he bought the books only as reference. Rika quickly says it's a joke and asserts she knows very well that his real interest is shonen manga. She scans the collection on the shelves and, excited, asks if he's a fan of a famous series called Golden Samurai. He confirms, saying it's his favorite work of his life, making the girl celebrate, revealing she also loves the story. The young man says he usually rereads it from the beginning, and the blonde is dazzled by noticing their rare collector's editions. The protagonist praises the manga as a complete work of art, highlighting its unforgettable ending that captured him entirely. Rika listens to her friend's opinion, her eyes shining with joy and admiration for sharing the same taste. He continues speaking. He's buzzing with excitement over how the story's unfolding. He says he's never met anyone who loves the rich work so much, and that his dad is going to be absolutely thrilled about it, leaving the protagonist a little bewildered by the comment. She asks if he ever mentioned that her father is a manga author, and the creator of Samurai de Oro, Yusunga, is blown away to discover his friend is the daughter of the legendary mangaka Kishimoto Musashi. The young man starts connecting the dots, recalling that they share the same surname and noting the unique blonde hue of her hair. He remembers the rumor that the author's wife is British, which explains his friend's features and the whole cliché. In that instant, he realizes he's already booked a visit to her house during Golden Week. He grabs Rika by the shoulders and shouts, pleading desperately for his father's autograph when they meet on holiday. The blonde promises to introduce him to her dad in person to her father, causing the protagonist to break down in tears of joy for finally succeeding as a fan. After he calms down, Yusun remarked that he has a burning curiosity he wants to settle once and for all. He questions why Samurai de Oro is her favorite manga, since her father has a slew of other famous works. She simply explains that the story has meant a great deal to her lately, for no particular reason, but next, she begins to lovingly recount a specific moment from Volume 5 of the famous comic, describing how the protagonist of the story always puts his friend's safety and well-being above all else. In the girl's mind, a vivid image of Yo Sung appears, acting in exactly the same way to protect those who matter to him. She reflects on how the hero of the tale manages to be immensely strong and incredibly gentle at once. With a gentle smile, she realizes deep in her heart how that intrepid warrior reminds her of Yaosun himself. The next day, classes return to normal, and the school routine resumes at the academy. Inside the council chamber, a sudden, unexpected conversation breaks out in the student council, mentioning the plans for the upcoming Golden Week. The council mate calls out the protagonist on his promise, recalling that he had pledged to help her during those days. She explains she needs to distract a terrifying professor and mentions that the school will be hosting an exchange student from Russia. She wants to give the visitor a welcome gift memorable to the visitor and asks the young man for help picking that special item. The girl points excitedly and confirms that it is exactly the favor she needs from him. Yo soon agrees to help and suggests scheduling the meeting for the 29th. Thinking she has no choice but to cooperate, she smiles, opens her fan, and warns him that she will not forgive him if he breaks the promise, leaving the protagonist stunned by her swiftness. The girl sends him on his way back to class, and he walks off thoughtful, noting how she brightened in an instant. To avoid a scheduling clash, the young man decides to ask Rika if they can shift the visit to the 30th. Back in the hallway, a curious classmate approaches, asking if he's heard the latest news. The friend. He comments on the notorious first-year troublemakers who caused problems in the kendo club and ended up being expelled. He reveals that the two rascals requested a transfer from the school on the same day. Finding the whole coincidence oddly strange, Yaosung gives a slight sideways smile and merely remarked that they must have their own reasons for leaving. He thinks to himself that it was well-deserved since now the two won't bother Sakamoto or Toho Karen at school any longer. The new teacher walks into the classroom with a gentle smile and jokes that the students are already behind on a Monday. She kindly instructs them to take their seats and open their English books to start the lesson. The class begins and a simple English question appears on the board about which of the two presented fruits is the cheapest. As the explanation continues, Rika gives her friend a few light taps on the back to try to get his attention. The English teacher, Mizuki Nani, decides to continue the class exercise and chooses a number of the day to answer. She calls out number 24, leaving Yusung's classmate panicked for being the chosen one this time. However, the teacher asks the student sitting directly behind that number to do the reading, shifting the focus onto the protagonist. Yasung stands up calmly and delivers the reading in flawless English, asking about recommendations for places in Japan. The teacher swallows hard and, visibly nervous, asks what would be a good answer to the read-out question. Without hesitation, he replies by suggesting Osaka and gives a detailed explanation of why the city is perfect for tourists. Mizuki is left stunned, her face tense, causing the young man to wonder why she reacts so oddly. He masks his applause and praises his flawless response, while the rest of the class erupts in enthusiastic applause. Despite the praise, he keenly notices that she made a grimace at someone she truly disliked. That reaction, Mizuki meets his gaze with a tense, worried look, thinking about how the young man has performed extremely well in class. She quickly turns back to the blackboard to try to keep the lesson's focus and explain the meaning of the passage read. Watching the professor's demeanor, Yasung is absolutely certain his suspicions were correct. He realizes that, for some strange reason, Mizuki-sensei seems terrified of his presence in the classroom. He walks down the hallway, recalling the absurd rumors they'd concocted that he's a mafia heir who's taken down gangs. Even though he's accustomed to stupid gossip, it seems odd to him that people are actually demonstrating so much physical dread toward him. He decides to act in the most ordinary and discreet possible as he steps into the teacher's lounge, ensuring no one gets the wrong idea. She analyzes Yusung's school record and is stunned to see that he's an exemplary student with perfect grades. She begins to spin absurd theories in her mind, wondering if his outstanding grades are just a disguise to eliminate her. Goosebumps of terror rise on her skin as she hears the sudden sound of the door opening behind her work chair. The protagonist enters the room bowing politely, but the teacher sees him as a true demonic creature. She startles and begins babbling, insisting she's not nervous at all, while the young man notes her instant desperation there. He notices clearly that she's flustered and wonders what to do in this awkward situation. The young man calmly explains he came only to conduct the career counseling interview she had scheduled, feeling relieved. It's clear she's terrified and wonders what to do in this awkward situation. The young man calmly explains he came only to conduct the career counseling interview she had scheduled, relieved. Upon understanding the real reason for his visit, she quickly regains her composure and kindly invites him to sit down. The professor begins the conversation, asking if he's already thought about what profession he'd like to pursue after school. He says he's not sure yet, and she suggests taking over his family's business if he can't decide. In her vivid imagination, the professor already envisions the young man leading a violent gang, trembling with fear at her own thoughts. Stammering, he musters courage and asks what his parents do for a living, and he replies that they run a small restaurant. The young woman repeats the answer, surprised and confused, prompting the young man to politely question if there would be any problem with that. She immediately denies it with an open smile and says she'd love to visit the business, leaving the young man relieved that the misunderstanding is cleared. She continues with the questionnaire, wanting to know which school subjects the protagonist feels most confident in. She suggests he pursue the sciences, but the young man disagrees, saying choosing a career just for ease is nonsense. Mizuki. She faces him, surprised and reflective at the maturity of that firm response from such a young student. Her eyes fixed, Yu-sung completes his reasoning, affirming with conviction that he wants to work at what he truly loves to do. She agrees that talent and love are different things, while he recalls with dread his former life in engineering. The professor confesses she never intended to teach at the start of everything, sparking the boy's curiosity about her past. Quite apologetic, she asks him to promise not to mock the revelation, and the young man assures he'll keep it serious. With a loving look, the professor reveals that her biggest childhood dream was to become a professional voice-over actress. She says she fell in love with a giant robot anime character back when she was in high school. However, leaving the coworker mortified for having believed all those school rumors. The Golden Week holidays finally arrive and the scenes shift to the bustling entrance of a stunning traditional temple in Tokyo, with people in casual wear. Yo-sung glances at his phone and realizes he's turned up far earlier than the rendezvous. He spots a girl in a purple dress from behind and instantly calls her name, recognizing his presence. She whirls around, finger pointed, scowling that he's terribly late, leaving the young man utterly bewildered. She demands an instant explanation, gruffly questioning whether he even knows what time it is. The girl continues to complain, hands on her hip, making the protagonist break into a cold sweat, clueless about the scolding she's giving him. He shows there's still 10 minutes until the appointed time, but she snaps that a gentleman must always be half an hour early. He apologizes to avoid trouble, while the girl decides to let it slide, this time under a very specific condition. She points to a nearby pastry shop and demands he buy a green tea ice cream as punishment for his supposed lack of manners. The young man questions why he must foot the treat, which only fuels her irritation at his query. Suddenly, a loud, smashing noise occurs, interrupting their heated exchange in a decidedly comic fashion. With a massive bump on his head, the young man begrudgingly pays for the treat while she savors the ice cream with sheer delight. She raves about its delicious flavor, and he calmly remarks that he's glad she liked it. He reminds them they need to focus on buying the visitor's welcome gift, leaving the girl to purchase the visitor's welcome gift, leaving the girl frozen with a question. He tries to mask opening the fan and ordering her to just follow him, but the young man soon realizes she had actually forgotten the mission. At that moment, a mysterious voice suddenly crackles through the discreet earpiece hidden in Kumiko's ear. The voice informs them of an excellent craft shop nearby and suggests taking the young man there to pick out the gift. In the car, the agents recommend that he try to act more naturally and meekly in order to charm the young man during the ride. In truth, they are the butler and the maid from her family, disguised and monitoring everything to guarantee the meeting's success. At the recommended shop, Kumiko is awestruck by a massive, imposing golden Buddha statue. She suggests taking that gigantic statue as a souvenir, leaving Yo-sung tense and the shopkeeper extremely enthusiastic. The girl boasts about her impeccable taste, while the merchant displays other rare items and the protagonist nearly faints at the outrageous price. Kumiko hears a hysterical complaint through the earpiece that nothing in the plan has been executed yet, startled by the blaring volume. The radio voice panics, warning that it's no time to play, and the girl tries to cover it up by loudly claiming she only felt a chill. She discreetly covers her mouth and whispers to the clerk to keep her voice down, drawing a bit of attention from the other shoppers. Through the earpiece, Minami reminds her that the main purpose of being there is a romantic date, telling her to look back. She reports that Yo-sung is distracted, staring at his phone screen, a clear sign he's already getting bored. The advisor warns that rule number 1 is never to leave the partner bored, leaving the girl irritated at having to act fast. Kumiko rushes forward and grabs Yo-sung's arm, pretending she just remembered an extremely important appointment. She bids a hasty farewell and darts out of the shop, dragging the young man with her while ignoring the vendor's protests about the rare collectible pieces. Meanwhile, on another busy stretch of sidewalk, firm footsteps approach, calling the venue's president. By virtue of his title, Yo-sung places his hand on Kumiko's shoulder, concerned, and asks if everything's alright, leaving the girl in total shock. She hides it with her fan, claiming she only felt a slight dizziness, hastily suggesting that they head quickly to the next location. Through the earpiece, Minima praises the swift response and orders them to a traditional clothing shop to check out the kimonos and yukatas. As soon as they arrive at the designated store, they are promptly greeted by the beautiful garments, traditional displayed in the window. The shopkeeper shows a cute dark-colored yukata, noting that the exchange student would surely love it. The protagonist examines the fabric thoughtfully and asks Kumiko for her take on the piece. She declares price irrelevant and demands they bring the most luxurious, exclusive garment in the shop. Startling Yusun with the bold demand, the shopkeeper accepts the request with a competitive grin and decides to fetch something truly special to showcase. She presents a dazzling kimono that costs around 500,000 yen, so shocking it nearly gives the young man a heart attack, yet Kumiko stays resolute. She finds the garment acceptable and asks to see other options, leaving the young man in complete despair over the ostentatious size. Various expensive models are tried on and quickly discarded. Because they don't fit the president's demanding style, time flies by in a rush. While the attempts continue inside the traditional clothing shop, they ultimately end up divided. Only 2 options remain, and the shopkeeper approaches with an intriguing suggestion. She suggests the girl try the outfits herself to help decide, explaining it's the best way to make a solid choice. The shopkeeper asks Yo-sun for his opinion, and the young man agrees that seeing the clothes on a body would greatly ease the final decision. Without giving room for refusal, the friendly clerk swiftly leads the embarrassed girl. She heads toward the fitting room. The moment she steps inside, the pleasant lady suddenly pulls off a realistic mask from her own face. Kumiko is utterly stunned as she realizes the friendly old woman was actually her maid. Minami, still in disguise, asks how she managed it, and the servant laughs, saying she'd do anything to support her young mistress. Minami proudly reveals she's a trained family ninja, and that the true owner of the shop willingly handed over the space for the plan. The young man soon understands that the whole kimono trying episode was part of a scheme for her to showcase her charm. Minima begins to dress the boss without giving her a chance to complain, while the girl frantically warns that she's not ready psychologically. From outside, the protagonist hears muffled cries coming from the fitting room and wonders what could be happening inside. Suddenly, the sound of the door swinging open echoes through the shop, causing the young man to look up from his phone and stare at Kumiko. She emerges from the fitting room wearing an elegant dark kimono with floral patterns and a beautiful red rose ornament in her hair. Confronted with the dazzling sight, the young man turns bright red and freezes with awe. Bashful and fidgeting with her hands, the girl timidly asks him how she looks in the traditional attire. A heavy silence hangs over the room for a few moments, making the girl even more anxious for his response. The protagonist swallows, then finally manages to stammer his first reaction after the initial shock. He says sincerely that she is simply marvelous, causing the girl's heart to race with joy, her face turning slightly embarrassed. She finishes by saying the outfit truly suits her perfectly. She regains her proud posture, letting out her signature laugh with the fan. As he applauds and praises her beauty, buoyant by the compliment, she announces she'll change again to try it on for Yucatan and asks him to wait a little longer. The fitting room door closes with a soft click, leaving the young man alone once more at the clothing store's reception. Inside, Kumiko collapses from sheer embarrassment and covers her blazing cheeks with her hands, unable to contain her emotion. She leans against the fitting room wall completely breathless, wondering what she should do in response to the young man's intense reaction. Back on the street after their shopping, the people around them start to stare and blush at the sight of the two of them together, exuding elegance. The young woman walked with exquisite grace and an enviable poise, drawing admiring glances from every passerby. The young man reflects on how she truly stands out in the crowd and smirks to himself as they finally arrive at the famed Nakano Broadway. Kumiko suggests grabbing lunch and mentions she'll call a private driver to whisk them away, flaunting her wealth. Meanwhile, they walk and he decides they should hurry because they're attracting too much attention when a faint camera click catches his ear. The young man looks back, intrigued by the noise, trying to discover where that sudden sound on the sidewalk came from. He calms down when he sees only two people wearing dark glasses taking a photo together, assuming it was just his paranoia. The girl calls him to keep moving, and he complies instantly, leaving the two disguised agents behind. Shinjiro exhales in relief, saying they were almost uncovered. While Minami rages about getting too close, he argues he needed good shots for Kumiko's report and complains about how slow the protagonist. To notice her feelings, Minami warns that he must not show that antipathy toward the young mistress in any way, and he reluctantly agrees in silence. The two youths finally arrive at a cozy establishment and hear the doorbell chime as they step inside. The protagonist introduces the spot, revealing it's his favorite ramen house in the whole region, one he often frequents. He tells her to calmly pick a dish from the menu while he rushes to the restaurant's bathroom to freshen up. In another spot, one of the companions, he suddenly starts feeling sharp pains and cramps in his stomach. Shinjiro complains of the pain with his hands on his belly, drawing Minami's attention, who rushes over worried. He blames the ice cream he ate at the shrine and hears his companion ordering him to leave abruptly so he doesn't ruin the boss's lunch. Unable to hold it any longer, he apologizes and darts off in a hurry to find a nearby restroom. After finally using it, the young man emerges with a look of immense relief and peace on his face. That relief vanishes instantly when he comes face to face with Yo Sung, washing his hands right there in front of him. Shinjiro points a shocked finger at him, and the protagonist is stunned to recognize the student council vice president. Back at the table, Kumiko beams happily as she sees the young man return, thinking that at last he had finished washing up. To the girl's total surprise and shock, the protagonist reappears, accompanied precisely by Minami and Shinjiro. He innocently explains that he ended up finding the vice president by chance in the bathroom. Together with his companion Yusung, he says he's very grateful for their help on the council, and that's why he decided to invite them to eat together. Kumiko visibly trembles as she agrees and sweats cold, unable to grasp why the two ruined the plan that way. He celebrates the unexpected gathering of the entire student council and, in good humor, invites the two to sit at the table. Now seated side by side, Kumiko internally laments, watching her carefully planned, peaceful date sail away with Minami. She whispers sincere apologies, explaining the bathroom incident and asking the boss to just act naturally from now on. Shortly after, the steaming, super hot bowls of ramen are finally placed on the table for everyone to eat. Kumiko faces the dish with a wondrous look, drawing the protagonist's attention, who notices his friend's curious reaction. He asks, surprised, if this is her first time eating ramen, and she shyly confesses that she had only ever seen the dish on TV. The young man thinks about how she's truly a lady of noble birth, while the butler shouts, furiously defending his lady from the direct question. Ignoring the complaints, Yusun eagerly asks whether the food's flavor pleases Kumiko's discerning palate. As she tastes it, cheeks flushed, the girl sweetly admits she found the traditional dish simply delicious. Yo soon flashes a sincere, friendly smile seeing his friend enjoy his favorite eat spot recommendation. The young man offers to foot the bill for more dishes, but Shinjiro tries to butt in and eat everything, only to be quickly rebuked by Minami because of his stomach ache. After a hearty ramen feast, the crew decides to keep the night rolling at a lively city arcade. Inside the gaming center, a metal claw attempts to snatch a cute plush bear, but ends up letting the toy slip. In the end, Kumiko almost have caught the plush, and Shinjiro, brimming with confidence, immediately offers to claim the prize for her. Then the two boys decide to face off. In an exciting, noisy round of a virtual fighting game, Shinjiro celebrates the win flamboyantly in the arcade, taunting Yo-sung for having won the thrilling round, his pride wounded and feeling the provocation is over the line. The protagonist changes his expression and swears to crush his rival in the next match. Behind his dark glasses, the butler smiles maliciously, determined to make the young man pay for being so close to his young boss. Yao-sung, irritated, points out the machine still has plenty of credits left, and the rival embraces the challenge, telling him to bring it on. Within seconds, the out-of-combat sound blares on the screen, and Shinjiro's character is humiliatedly defeated, leaving him speechless. With an astonishingly victorious grin, Yoo-sung fires back at his opponent, telling the vice president to show a little more bite. Grinding his teeth in pure frustration at being beaten, the butler refuses to accept the outcome and decides to change tactic. He shouts the name of the protagonist in a challenging tone, Absolute, forcing the youngster to stare him down with a sour expression. The vice president points dramatically across the arcade, declaring they'll settle that dispute on another machine. Challenges the young man on the punching machine, asserting that real men settle their differences. Using the raw physical force of their bodies, he slowly unbuttons his suit shirt, confidently claiming he hides a big secret beneath the fabric. He proudly reveals an ultra-chiseled physique, leaving the protagonist completely stunned by the butler's unexpected appearance. The butler laughs victoriously at Yoo-sung's horrified reaction, as he tries to understand how so much muscle could be concealed under a suit. Meanwhile, Kumiko hides her embarrassed face behind a fan. Minami smacks his own forehead, displeased with his brother's nonsense. The shirtless butler assumes the punching challenge has been accepted, even though the protagonist protests, saying he never agreed. He adjusts his sunglasses provocatively, mocking him and asking if the youngster was actually eager to flee the showdown. The protagonist's gaze shifts to a cold, serious expression while he listens to the rival taunt, saying he's disappointed in him. Shinjiro extends his arm imposingly and swears he never imagined the youth would be cowardly enough to run from a strength contest. He tells the youngster to pay close attention to his display of power, confident it will deliver a grand lesson. The vice president shouts with full determination and readies his best fist to unleash a devastating blow in the testing machine. He charges forward with speed and lands an incredibly strong hit on the machine's punching bag, releasing all his physical energy. The score climbs rapidly until it reaches an astounding 960 points, setting a new record that leaves the girls amazed. Shinjiro points victoriously at the protagonist, calling him to his turn, while the onlookers murmur in admiration of the record. Yoo-sung silently pleads so she could interrupt the fight, but Kumiko says she's eager to see his true strength. Even though he keeps begging to stop this madness, the girl's chant convinces him and he finally accepts the challenge. He cracks his knuckles thoughtfully and begins to ready himself, questioning himself in his mind about how things got so out of control. The young man wears an extremely focused expression, thinking that the final score is, in reality, the least of his worries. There, he reflects on the colossal physical strength of his body, which seems to possess an incredible power bonus in that fantastical world. The protagonist fears that, if he throws a punch with all his might real, he'll end up shattering the entire testing machine into pieces. With few alternatives than to attack, he decides to go all in once and for all to end this crazy competition, reasoning that if the machine is going to break from the impact, it's better for the destruction to be spectacular. The youth surges forward at breakneck speed, unleashing a devastating energy strike directly into the test machine's framework. Shinjiro watches his opponent's assault, arms crossed, waiting eagerly to see the result of his rival's blow. At the moment of impact, Yoo-sung realizes he slammed and dented the iron frame of the machine instead of the soft punching bag. Due to the youngster's colossal misaim, the digital scoreboard simply registers nothing, flashing a 0 on the screen. The rivals begin to mock him, saying he missed the mark badly, and he stays silent, trying to hide his true intentions. He breathes a sigh of relief at not having smashed the machine completely and decides to fake a stumble as he threw the strike. Yet when he looks more carefully at the upper part of the structure, the protagonist spots something terribly odd happening with the apparatus. Suddenly, the entire upper section of the punching machine tears away from its iron base, collapsing noisily directly on the ground. A deathly silence blankets the entire arcade while everyone there stares at the shattered piece on the floor, completely incredulous. Sweeping cold from that terrifying display of power, the butler quickly decides to call it a draw for today's bout. He shouts nervously that he'll win next time and walks off as the protagonist sighs in relief for having survived the mess. To soothe the tension after the noisy incident, the scene now shifts to the entrance of a whimsical instant photo booth. He suggests the whole group snap a few pictures together as a special memento of the fun outing they had today. Kumiko loves the idea and eagerly agrees, noting that capturing that special moment in the booth sounds downright fun. The youngster master invites everyone to step into the booth at once to start the goofy, relaxed poses. Inside the compact booth, the four friends huddle close, the instant camera whirring. The printed strip emerges, revealing moments extremely comedic and relaxed for all of them, using goofy prop. Minami praises the excellent final result of the pictures, while her brother angrily complains about having closed his eyes in one of them. Holding the photos tenderly, Kumiko flashes a radiant smile and admits that she found the experience incredibly fun and special. The young man watches her, happy to see her. Now in the music room, Shinjiro grabs the microphone, singing with all his might, while the young man plays the tambourine to accompany him. Kumiko also takes the vocals and lets her singing out in an extremely sweet and cute, delighting everyone in the room under the bright light. Then she and the protagonist share the microphones to sing a beautiful duet together. She smiles brightly throughout the entire song. As night falls over the bustling city, Yo-sung bids his friends farewell. He wishes them a safe journey home with genuine affection. From inside the car, the young woman thanks them, saying she had a great time, while her two attendants appear completely exhausted in the back. The two servers stare ahead with pale, weary faces, reflecting on how they truly gave their all to make the day work. Minami steps forward and sincerely apologizes to the boss for all the mishaps and intrusions that occurred during the outing. She regrets getting so carried away to the point of missing the chance to leave the two of them alone, as originally planned. The young woman listens to her staff's explanations in silence, her face calm and thoughtful as the vehicle moves forward. Suddenly, she flashes a smile soft and light, showing there's no need for them to worry. Kumiko gently assures them everything's fine and declares with absolute certainty that she had more than enough fun on today's outing. She fondly recalls the unprecedented feeling of waiting for someone and sharing the delicious green tea ice cream with the young man. She remembers also all the relaxed laughter and the conversations, the fun ones they shared. While picking out clothes at the traditional shop, she looks at the printed photo strip in her hands and realizes that every tiny moment of that day left her immensely happy and fulfilled. She realizes she hasn't had this much fun in ages, especially in the company of her two best childhood friends and loyal protectors. With a sincere gaze, she thanks from the bottom of her heart Shinjiro and Minami for their unwavering loyalty, for always being by her side. The young woman lowers her head, grateful, leaving the two servants deeply moved by her sweet gesture. They burst into tears, hearing that this day will become a treasured memory for their boss, and they vow eternal loyalty to her. And they crying with emotion upon hearing that this day will become a treasured memory for their boss, and they swear everlasting devotion, crying loudly, clutching their hand. The two declare with fervor that they will serve her faithfully for the rest of their lives with the greatest joy in the world. Kumiko calls for calm and reminds them this won't be their last chance, demanding that next time they help her correctly and without mistake. As the car pulls away down the night-lit avenue, the servants shout excitedly that they'll do anything to ensure the next meeting's success. Far away in a dim office, a dark-haired artist works intently at his digital tablet, sketching a new piece. Rika opens the bedroom door. She's beaming, calls her dad with a huge grin, asks if he hasn't forgotten that her friend is coming tomorrow, and he assures her he remembers perfectly. He smiles sideways, admits he's pretty excited about the meeting, and says he can't wait to meet the boy she's always raving about, Kim Yo-sung. On the second day of vacation, Yo-sung arrives at Rika's house and finds her father waiting at the gate. The young man is stunned, a cold sweat breaking out as the man stands right before him. Yo-sung bows deeply, greeting the famed author, who chuckles at the youngster's classic look. To Yo-sung, this is a face-to-face with the legendary god of manga, the creator of Samurai of Gold *. The author invites him inside, noting his wife has prepared a special banquet. Rika's warm-hearted mother greets him with a cozy smile, urging him to sit before the food cools. Yo-sung's mouth hangs open at the sheer number of elegant, delicious dishes laid out on the table. The whole family gathers around, and the young man politely thanks everyone for the marvelous feast. Mid-meal, Rika's father casually remarked that his daughter hasn't stopped talking about Yo-sung lately. He explains he's eager to meet him because it's the first time his daughter has grown so close to a guy. Sensing the mood grow tense, the protagonist decides he must clear up any misunderstanding right away. He explains that they're just good friends, while Rika argues with her father for making the situation so awkward. The man confesses that he was worried because Yo-sung was her first male friend, but any dad would feel that way. Hearing this, Yo-sung imagines how he'd react if he were the author, realizing that if he had a daughter as lovely as his friend, he'd see any other boy as a threat. Rika, still flushed with embarrassment, scolds her father again for spouting such nonsense. The young man tries to nod amiably to ease the tension, but both end up looking sheepish. Rika asks why he's looking at her that way, and the protagonist quickly averts his gaze. She grows even angrier at the remarks and demands everyone stop saying embarrassing things at the table. The girl's parents watch the scene happy, commenting how their daughter has truly grown up and matured. Her father smiles nostalgically, remembering when he thought his daughter would always be a little girl. He recalls when the little rich girl ran happily through the house clutching her plush rabbit. Back then, she used to say with all the innocence in the world that she'd marry her own father when she grew up. Returning to the present, the author mentions he learned the young man is a huge fan of his stories. He asks if the youth would like to tour his studio after the meal, leaving the boy thrilled. Yoon beams at the chance to see the studio and get an autograph, thinking he can finally walk away from life happy. He declares this is the artist he respects most in the whole world, and Rika laughs at her friend's excitement. Before heading to the studio, the girl opens the door to her own room and shows the guest her space. The protagonist is impressed by the sheer number of shelves and says the place looks like a manga library. Rika says she'll fetch some snacks and tea from the kitchen, asking her friend to wait there for a few minutes. She peeks back through the door crack and teases him not to touch anything while she's out. Alone in the room, the young man realizes this is his first time stepping into a girl's fourth floor. He pulls out his phone to play a game and clear his mind. Suddenly, Rika's mother bursts through the door with a huge grin, startling him. He greets her in a polite, but she gently asks to be called only by her first name, Maria. The young man feels a bit embarrassed by her confidence, yet asks what brings her here, and she reveals she came to show his daughter's past. Playfully, the woman pulls out a large brown notebook containing the entire growth album of the rich girl. She begins flipping through old photos from when her daughter was just a baby, leaving the guest quite curious. Next, she finds a special photo from when she took her daughter to the famous pop culture event called Comic-Con. Maria reveals she used to cosplay, and the young man reflects that a love for those things must run in the family's blood. Suddenly, the mother cheerfully announces she finally uncovered the true and darkest secret of the girl's past. The photo shows Rika dressed in a striking gothic style, striking a classic anime character pose at that exact moment. Rika rushes back to the room and lets out a desperate scream upon seeing her mother clutching the photo album. She trembles as she asks if her mother really showed that to him, and the woman calmly confirms everything. The girl shrieks with embarrassment while the protagonist notes how passionate she always was about that universe. Rika darts forward, desperate, swearing she no longer does cosplay, explaining it was just a teenage misstep. Her mother leaves laughing, telling them to have fun as Rika yells angrily for her not to dare go back there. With Maria's exit, an awkward silence blankets the room, the two sitting on the floor at a loss for words. She begs her friend to keep this absolute secret, and he agrees, saying there'd be no one to tell anyway. Rika makes a disgusted gesture and remains visibly mortified by the whole uncomfortable situation. The protagonist, he tries to soothe her, telling her in a friendly tone not to be so embarrassed about the pictures. He remarks that everyone goes through that weird teenage phase, but she quickly asks if he ever did something similar. She asks, rubbing her cheek in embarrassment, if he ever did something alike. He admits that back in elementary school things were pretty rough for him too, and offers to show a photo from that era. She shakes her head, eyes wide with curiosity. Yoon scours his phone at speed until he finally locates the old record he's been hunting for. He holds out his phone, displaying the screen to his friend, who is genuinely stunned by the old picture of him. Eyes wide with amazement, she can barely utter a full sentence at what she sees on the screen. The photo shows young Yo-sung in leather-studded gear, striking wildly exaggerated poses, looking like a gothic rocker. She remarks how skinny and cute he was back then, wondering how he ended up so muscular. Today, he explains that he once felt very weak and not masculine, so he decided to start heavy training before entering high school. Rika lets out a relaxed laugh and asks whether she would have met that skinny version of him had she transferred schools earlier. Suddenly, she blurts out that she loves him just the way he is now, leaving the protagonist utterly surprised. With the declaration, noticing what she just said without thinking, the girl immediately covers her mouth and she turns red as a tomato. The young man watches her closely, feeling the atmosphere shift, and calls her by name in a soft, confused tone. With his heart pounding extremely fast, the two stand on the bedroom floor, staring into nothing out of sheer embarrassment. Desperate to fix the situation, the girl shouts loudly that she meant she only likes him as a great friend. The boy smirks sideways and nods a bit haphazardly, repeating to himself that they're just good comrades. The two burst into loud, forced laughter, trying to chase away the weird vibe that settled there. Shortly after, he calls her in a calmer, more serious tone, making her look directly at him. She sincerely thanks him for the invitation to go to his house, since finally she was able to meet the great master and get an autograph. The young man says that day will be a treasured memory for the rest of his life, while she insists she doesn't need to thank him for it. He says with a warm smile that she's always very welcome there, and that the doors of his home will always be open. The young man gladly accepts the invitation, promising promising that he'll certainly be back soon for another fun visit. Time flies, and the sky already begins to take on a beautiful orange hue as the sunset draws to a close. The young man says he's been here for quite a while and needs to go home and have a calm dinner. Rika suddenly remembers that the young man has a family trip abroad the next day and asks where they're headed. She warns him they'll be apart for a whole week and tells him not to forget plenty of sunscreen at the beach. He becomes very protective, asking her to call if she needs any help, even from across the ocean. He pauses, thoughtful, and concludes that, with his absurd physique, swimming to Hawaii seems almost doable. Soon later, he dismisses the crazy notion, joking that it's easier just to spend his savings on a plane ticket. The girl waves affectionately, saying they'll meet again as soon as classes resume. The young man returns Rika's warm smile and walks back home, satisfied with the wonderful day they shared. The scene cuts to a memory of when they discovered they lived very close, just one stop away from each other, only a few stations apart. It also shows the day they ate together on a park bench, and she thanked him for loving the simple, tasty food he brought. She recalls how the young man gave his all to help Karen in the past, proving himself truly altruistic. She remembers the comforting feeling of him shielding her in the noisy crowd, holding her tightly. He gently urged her to endure the press of the people a little longer, making her heart pound even faster. The young man gripped her hand firmly so they wouldn't get lost and could run together without any trouble on the street. Back in the present, Rika watches his silhouette recede down the sidewalk, a strange thrill blooming in her chest. 3 days fly by, and the scene shifts to the bustling, famous district of Akuravara. On the 5th day of vacation, the protagonist strolls calmly down the crowded street, satisfied that he's managed to buy every new manga he wanted. With the purchases done, he starts to feel a bit hungry and decides to look for a nice, quiet spot to eat. The young man thinks about heading to his all-time favorite ramen shop when suddenly he hears the rapid sound of footsteps quickly behind him. A woman's voice shouts desperately, telling him to get out of the way immediately, drawing the attention of everyone on the crowded sidewalk. Yo-sung looks to the side, confused, and finds a girl leaping high into the air straight toward him, absurdly descending from above. The mysterious girl suddenly drops onto him and hurriedly demands silence. In the impact of the unexpected fall, he ends up seeing something he shouldn't have and is utterly confused, not understanding a thing. The protagonist's nose starts bleeding from sheer embarrassment, wondering if he's stumbled into some cliché romance story. He quickly pulls himself together, realizing this is no time to be daydreaming about such nonsense. The girl merely mutters disdainfully, leaving the guy fuming for not even getting a sincere thank you. Suddenly, a squad of suited men bursts onto the scene, shouting Sasha's name, putting both of them on high alert. With no time for a detailed explanation, the girl grabs Yo-sun's hand and begs him for immediate help. The young man stops her before she can sprint that way, warning her that her chosen route is a dead end. He takes charge of the escape, ordering her to follow him through a far safer shortcut to lose the pursuers. The two dash into Yoo-sun's favorite ramen shop, hoping to hide from the chase. Crouched inside the eatery, they watch in silence as the suited men walk past on the street outside. Relieved they weren't spotted, the two breathe deeply, trying to catch their breath after the mad dash. The girl rises, a little embarrassed, readjusting her skirt and trying to act natural in front of the guy. Finally, she thanks him for the invaluable help, and the protagonist she demands to know right now why she's being chased. Sasha suggests they sit down first. She introduces herself and asks the guy's name, and he says he's Kim Yo-sung. She's taken aback to learn he isn't Japanese, and Yoon explains he's actually a second-generation Korean. The guy loses his patience and orders her not to dodge the main question about who the people behind her are. When she refuses to answer, he stands up, says he's leaving, and wishes her good luck on her escape. The girl complains that common sense would be to help a cute girl first and ask the questions later. As a last-ditch effort to make her stay, Sasha sticks her hand in the bag and offers a massive pile of cash, pulling out gigantic bundles filled with high-denomination bills, leaving the guy completely stunned by the wealth. Yo-sung takes the deal on the spot and the two shake hands, though she mutters that in the end everything's solved with money. Seeing he's now on her side, the girl pulls off her hat and starts spilling the whole truth about herself. She lets her long blue hair down, revealing an extremely eye-catching and radiant. Sasha reveals that her father is an extremely important and powerful figure in a highly influential place called Luxaya. She confesses with a sad look that those mysterious suited people were trying to hold her on the street. The protagonist is stunned to realize she's exactly one of the heroines from his favorite romance game. A little later, the two slip into a clothing shop to change her look and avoid easy recognition. She emerges from the fitting room in a sleek, modern, sporty outfit with a cap and jacket, asking him what he thinks of the disguise. The guy praises the comfy clothing choice, and she stipulates his mission is to protect her until 7 p.m. She guarantees that after that hour, she'll handle everything everything herself and asks if there's any fun place to hang out. The guy finds the idea absurd because she is being hunted, but she snaps back saying it's far easier to lose them in the crowd. She ends up agreeing with Alexandra's clever argument, also known by the nickname Sasha, and decides to accompany her. She's a Russian-born girl who's a smash hit in the romance game franchise she comes from. Normally, she'd have run into the story's official protagonist, but fate had her stumble onto Yaosung first. The young man starts wondering if all this mess is happening before her official debut in the main timeline. He isn't certain why she's being chased now, nor whether he should be meddling so directly. The young man recalls how he'd have liked to give her a sermon for trying to buy him out using all that cash laid out on the table. That's what he'd have liked to say to keep his stance, but the offered sum was simply too high to turn down. He lets out a long sigh and decides to focus only on surviving the next 6 hours of work protecting the girl. Meanwhile, Sasha watches him out of the corner of her eye with a mischievous grin. Confident in his ability to read people, he remembers how he lifted her with immense ease and realized from the first moment that the kid was incredibly strong. The girl is absolutely sure he'll be able to hold his own and protect her from any danger, no problem at all. Yaosung warns that it's time to move, but suddenly a loud command shout from behind cuts the conversation short. One of the henchmen points toward them and orders, "Capture them," leaving the protagonist outraged at being discovered so quickly. The two sprint at full speed, while Yaosung tries to guess whether the pursuers are elite secret agents. As he runs, the protagonist is caught off guard by a massive man in a black suit who appears right in his path. The adversary throws a blindingly fast and powerful punch toward the young man, who tries to twist his head while sprinting. With absurd reflexes, the protagonist manages to block and hold the aggressor's arm firmly before being hit. The young man glances back, fully alert, while Sasha is left stunned. Witnessing that rapid display of strength, Yaosung quickly opens a phone booth red, and he orders the girl to get inside at once so she can stay hidden there. He shuts the booth door to keep her safe while he readies himself to take on the rest of the henchmen. The protagonist reflects that the man he just blocked is on a completely different. The youngster notes that these guys are far more dangerous than the petty street troublemakers he usually deals with. However, he knows that, to the misfortune of those henchmen, their luck has just turned for the worse. The protagonist enters the fight thinking that in romantic comedy stories the biggest-bodied character always wins. He starts launching precise strikes and knocks out several opponents in a single blow, leaving them all sprawled on the ground. He readies himself to keep fighting, but the remaining henchmen notice his absurd strength and decide to flee in haste. In that moment of distraction, Captain Boris materializes out of nowhere and lands a surprise strike extremely fast against the young Yaosung. He becomes quite irritated at having been caught off guard by such a relentless, powerful opponent. Captain Boris composes himself with a confident stance, showing that he's a fighter extremely experienced and dangerous. The suited man faces the surprised youngster who managed to block the strike, while Yaosung notes that he's tougher than he thought. Still, the protagonist stands his ground and begins to analyze his opponent to devise a quick combat strategy. He humorously wonders if that rival will also fall before his absurd rom-com hero strength. Inside the phone booth, Sasha watches everything, worried, and thinks that no matter how strong the faithful young Kree may seem, it's impossible for any ordinary teen to take down a professional fighter like Boris. Meanwhile, the protagonist flashes a sideways grin and reflects that you should never underestimate a rich girl's wallet again. Determined to end this mess once and for all, the youngster completely shifts his stance and gets serious in the fight. He charges at breakneck speed toward the captain, determined to finish the bout as fast as possible. Captain Boris's eyes widen in shock at the incredible speed with which the youth darts right in front of him. With a swift, precise motion, the protagonist dodges the attack and lands a powerful blow to immobilize his foe. He clamps the man's arm with crushing force, preventing any movement or counter-strike. Yaosung employs his combat technique to twist the opponent's joints with ease, forcing him straight to the ground. The captain lets out a guttural scream of pain and agony as the absurd pressure bears down on his joint. He tries to resist by any means, but realizes the young man's physical strength is utterly beyond normal, and the man becomes desperate as he notices that he is completely trapped with no chance of escaping that submission. Painful. The youth uses his full body weight to pin his opponent's limbs to the ground, applying a joint lock perfect. Boris roars in fury, being dominated by such an efficient joint lock from a boy so young. He cries out in agony over his hip while feeling his joints being pressed to the brink of rupture. The captain accuses the youth of trying to leave him crippled, but Yaosung simply ignores the screams and completes the immobilization. With one final surge of strength, the youth hurls his opponent violently straight into the pavement. The suited man collapses, completely unconscious on the ground. Finally defeated, defeated and beyond any chance of recovery. To keep fighting, the protagonist calmly complains about the danger of joint injuries and wonders who would foot his gym bill if Sasha got hurt. He slowly opens the phone booth door, staring at the scene completely shocked, unable to believe Boris's defeat. She watches the young man walk away with an intimidating aura and wonders how an ordinary person can be that strong. Far away, Minami makes a confidential phone call, quickly reporting that Captain Boris was defeated. The man on the other end finds the news simply impossible, claiming no fighter in Japan should be able to beat him. She describes the physical traits of the young man with black hair and sharp eyes, causing the man on the phone to start to suspect. With a wary glance, the man wonders if the mysterious figure behind that beating is the legendary Black Yasha. In a secret chat room, rapid, urgent rumors begin to surface asking whether the Black Yasha truly resurfaced. Another user confirms the story that something serious went down in the Akihabara district, and that rumors have already spread throughout Tokyo. Several messages debate whether that legendary underworld informant is truly that powerful or just an urban legend. Kumiko watches the discussion on her computer screen with disdain, thinking how newbies know absolutely nothing. She recalls a legendary fighting tournament from the past tournament known as the God of the Fist. Organized in 1999, it was precisely then that a masked, mysterious warrior called Fuma Katero appeared out of nowhere for the bout. Despite having fought only once, Katero made it to the grand final and became a true legend. She wonders if the recent rumors are real and whether that legendary warrior of the past has truly decided to return to action now. Determined to investigate the intriguing story up close, Kumiko pulls on her dark jacket with resolve, steps onto the bustling city street, alert for any clue that could lead her to the whereabouts of the legendary warrior. She stays focused and vows to uncover the truth about his location and the secret of her own father. Upon entering the place Sasha has longed to visit, the two are warmly greeted by several maid cafe waitresses. He finds all of that extremely embarrassing and uncomfortable, but deep down admits that secretly he wanted to hear that reception. He places his hand on his forehead, realizing the special spot is just another themed cafe, while she remarked that the visit is a must in Japan. One of the waitresses guides them with great cheer to a reserved table and politely asks. He tells them to get settled for a meal. The young man, he is stunned that they're pretending to be ordinary tourists, but she assures him they'll be safe after the beating she gave the guard. Holding the heart-adorned menu, she feels a terrible, strange chill run through her body. The young man remarks how dangerous it would be for her to show her face on the streets and suggests they must have used an electromagnetic pulse to shut down the cameras. She explains that combat squads often employ that tactic to disable electronic devices. Close to acting, Sasha reveals that the acronym stands for a massive Luxia weapons manufacturer, and he asks why such a powerful company would want to keep her. He repeats that she's the daughter of someone with an extremely high influence. When they're interrupted by one of the officials approaching the table, the star waitress arrives, cheerfully serving the dishes, and introduces herself by mimicking a cute kitten, leaving the young man completely stunned. Yo Suok notes that he's still not fully accustomed to this culture, while Sasha thanks happily for the food served at the table. The waitress asks him to wait a moment and announces that there is a ritual mandatory that everyone must perform before they start eating. She orders the protagonist to repeat her cute gestures and words. Leaving the boy desperate and clueless about what to do, the staff member folds her hands into a heart shape right over the plate and gives the cue to begin the act. She strikes an extremely cute kitten pose, making the young man nearly spit blood from sheer embarrassment. While Sasha enjoys the spectacle, he and the waitress demand that he copy the same adorable hand gestures, insisting it's a non-negotiable cafe rule. Extremely embarrassed and with his face blazing red, the kid draws a deep breath and tries to summon the courage to do it once and for all. Finally, he forms the heart sign with his hands and repeats the words, mortified, prompting Sasha to burst into laughter and point at him. The manager wishes them a good appetite and depart, leaving the protagonist utterly dejected at the table while his friend keeps laughing loudly. Already completely exhausted mentally from all that shame, the young man begins to. He looks at his food and admits that it's surprisingly tasty. The friendly waitress returns shortly after to ask with a smile on her face whether the food really pleased them. She explains that there's a penalty rule for whoever loses the next little game at the table, pulling out a cute cat ear headband in her hand. The protagonist breaks out in a cold sweat and starts fearing the worst as he faces that plush accessory while the manager confirms the punishment rules. She reveals that the loser will have to wear the little ears and finish every sentence meowing like a cat until the next round of the game ends. The boy asks, asks desperately if any other punishment option exists, but his friend merely says that all that matters is winning the penalty showdown. But his friend only says that all that matters is winning the card duel to get off the hook. With no other alternative acceptable, the protagonist decides to take that card match completely seriously to avoid the humiliating punishment. He holds his cards with trembling hands and declares with fervor that he'll win by any means, under the girl's confident stare. In the end, the young man loses and is forced to don the kitten accessory on his head, turning bright red with shame. Trembling with rage and humiliation, he demands one more round, meowing very softly, triggering an uncontrollable burst of laughter at Sasha. She mocks him, saying that the cute kitten look doesn't match his physical bearing at all, leaving the young man even more furious and irritated. After spending hours having fun in the themed cafe, the two finally decide to leave, and the waitresses bid them farewell cheerfully. Sasha stretches, delighted with the wonderful walk they took, while the boy bitterly laments for not having won any game. He notes it's almost 5 o'clock and asks if it's really okay that they didn't visit the city's famous tourist spot. Walking under the beautiful sunset sky, the blue-haired girl suddenly stops and says she needs to confess something serious. She reveals that the men in black suits he fought and knocked out earlier on the street were actually his father's bodyguards hired by his father. The girl offers sincere apologies for lying and explains she only slipped out of the hotel in secret to get a little tour of Japan. She assures him he can now leave peacefully, as she'll handle contacting security and getting him safely back to the hotel. The young woman thanks him immensely for his company today, flashing a radiant smile as she listens to the roar of an aircraft. Suddenly, a loud, piercing laugh echoes from above, and the blue-bearded man declares that he finally managed to find her after all that searching. The protagonist looks up, terrified, and spots a massive combat helicopter soaring just above their heads on the street. The aircraft begins a noisy descent, kicking up clouds of dust and dry leaves as it prepares to land right there nearby. The blue-bearded man steps out of the helicopter, delivering a sarcastic comment about the botched escape Sasha tried to pull off today. He approaches, calling the girl princess, and casting a decidedly distrustful and threatening stare toward Yosun, who stays silent. The girl becomes completely trembling and scared, stammering as she asks how he managed to locate them so easily. The imposing man in a leopard coat steps forward and declares firmly that this matter is strictly a family and personal issue of his. He walks slowly toward the two young people, repeating that the matter in question involved only the future of his beloved daughter. Sasha takes all the blame for the escape and begs her father not to hurt her friend, but the man coldly says that it no longer matters. Upon hearing how the girl called the blue-bearded man, the protagonist finally realizes that that intimidating figure is her real father. Even amid the tense atmosphere, Yusun gets sidetracked by a silly question, wondering why a man from Luxia is speaking Japanese there. Sasha is left bewildered when her father suddenly mentions hearing about the resurgence of the legendary Black Yasha in Tokyo. He asks if she got involved with him, referring to the Japanese bodyguard he hired, leaving Yusun confused. He remarks that that mysterious operative vanished from the map without leaving absolutely no trace for 10 years. The man unveils the legendary identity of Fuma Kataro, while the protagonist continues knowing nothing of what he's talking about. Sasha's father shouts enthusiastically, determined to finally end the life or death battle they started 18 years ago. As examining the boy up close, the man asks who he truly is, and the protagonist responds politely, his true name. He asks whether by chance Yasun knows anyone named Fuma Kataro, and the boy assures it's the first time he's heard that name. A heavy silence blankets the room as the man stares at him, dead serious, trying to digest the answer. He accepts it and tells his daughter he'll save her from the punishment of being disinherited, for now, ordering the two to leave. Relieved, the young man concludes it was all a huge misunderstanding, and that he must simply resemble that Katlaro. However, Sasha's father calls him back and asks outright how an ordinary kid managed to defeat Captain Boris Yusung, recalling the hulking man he faced earlier, and asks him to convey his sincere apologies to the captain. The young man naively explains he thought the man was a real captor, and therefore never gauged his own strength. The man recalls the brutal out-of-combat scene his best soldier endured and notes the absurd potential the youth possesses. He bears his strong, scar-ridden arms scarred with pride, showing he respects the strength and determination of born fighters. Sasha shouts the name of the protagonist, clearly worried as she senses things are about to get dangerous there. The boy steels himself with a serious, defiant stare, ready to face any new threat that appears right before him. The man finds that reaction extremely intriguing and challenges the youth to unleash his true power in combat. During the man's swift onslaught, the protagonist's backpack gets ripped open and his brand new manga falls straight onto the sidewalk. The kid erupts in tears of pure rage at seeing his book disrespected, swearing he'll never forgive it. Sasha's father charges forward at astonishing speed toward Yosun, finally sparking a direct an intense clash. The protagonist reacts instantly and uses his arms to block the opponent's devastating blow with precise, firm strength. The man steps back, impressed by the flawless defense, while the kid retorts that it was truly amazing. Irritated, the kid questions why he's attacking out of nowhere. Dodging another dangerous strike, the opponent answers that he's doing it because he's a rare combat genius, leaving the kid even more confused and nervous. He emphasizes how incredible it is for an untrained student to defeat his best soldier using only his bare hands. The two trade rapid blows in the air, and the man declares such a grand feat should be theoretically impossible to achieve. He praises him as a rare prodigy that surfaces only once every 100 years in the world of fight. The protagonist listens to the praise in silence, his face dead serious and focused as he tries to catch his breath. The man gathers a massive amount of concentrated energy in his fist and readies another devastating strike. The powerful blow is unleashed with immense force and speed, generating a massive shockwave at the spot with the heavy impact. The man declares firmly that he wants to help him develop and awaken that great fighting talent. In that moment of danger, the protagonist finally sees the truth behind the game universe he's been reincarnated into. He realizes that this place definitely is not a simple, ordinary school romance comedy. The kid notes that the man's proposal seems ripped straight from the pages of a classic battle-focused shonen manga. At first, everything really seemed to be following the cliched romance trope school, but now things have dramatically leveled up. He also grasps so much to build that muscular physique. He also understands the reason for living, getting into countless scrapes and trouble with dangerous people since day one of class. The young man concludes that his absurd physical strength wasn't just a joke, and that everything that has happened so far leads to a single answer. He realizes that his school romance story has completely changed direction and turned into a true action battle manga. The young man is certain absolute, recalling that the publishing house behind the work is extremely famous for that genre. He knows that keeping a pure romance story in a magazine renowned for fights would be a tough task with no chance of public success. He deduces that the author must have yielded to the publisher's pressure to shift the focus and insert visceral fights or nostalgic action, climbing the ranking. Thinking of that tragic genre shift possibility, the protagonist begins to foresee a very complicated future for himself. If that's truly the case, he knows he'll be hunted by mad fighters and his own life will forever be at stake. The imposing man with dark glasses and a blue beard stands still, waiting calmly. A definitive answer from the youth. He offers to cover all school expenses, a new house, even an imported car, if the young man agrees to work under his command. The protagonist flashes a wide, defiant grin upon realizing that, by classic manga rules, that strong opponent is doomed. He knows that in the end, powerful villains like that always end up completely defeated by the true hero. With that in mind, the boy concludes that his best survival strategy is to stay close to the story's main hero. Sasha's father sighs in relief at finally having resolved the situation and prepares to take the next step. Kim Yo-sung erupts, shouting why that man needs to be so extreme about everything. Without a moment for dialogue, the man lunges forward quickly and lands a heavy blow on the youth, who lets out a pained groan. Feeling the violent impact, Yoo-sun watches in horror as his opponent is trying to finish him off right there. The head of the corporation steps forward again with empty hands, commenting that his initial intention was to take it easy with the kid Yo-sung. He spots a gap in the adversary's defense and seizes the perfect moment to strike at his head. However, the youth's punch barely tickles the man, leaving only a small scratch on his face and a threatening glare. The protagonist bites his teeth in pure frustration as he realizes his strongest blow barely harmed the rival. The protagonist bites his teeth in pure frustration as he sees his strongest blow barely dent the rival. The experienced warrior merely smiles and readies another relentless assault on the defenseless youth. The man grips Yo-sung's arm with iron resolve, warning him that he's about to impart a priceless combat tip. He clenches his fist with all his might and explains that the moment one decides to strike at someone, the opponent radiates an awe-inspiring aura, and that every attack must always be executed with the genuine intent to finish the opponent. Then he lands a devastating blow. Next to Yoo-sung, the imposing figure remains standing, his fists glowing with violet energy, showcasing overwhelming physical superiority, completely drained. Yoo-sung collapses to his knees, struggling to gasp back the stolen breath. The youth reflects that he survived the brutal onslaught only because he was quick enough to dodge the rival's hand. Still, the protagonist remains confused and terrified, trying to grasp what absurd technique he just faced. The corporate chief smiles proudly, reveals that the mysterious strike is called the Emperor Yoo-sung's double eagle, is completely stunned by the revelation, and asks with cold sweat what exactly he meant. Exactly that. The man explains it's a secret imperial martial art of the Roman Romanov family, known as the Two-Headed Eagle. Without wasting a moment, the martial arts master lunges again and lands a rapid barrage of blows on the protagonist, Yutsung. He tries to defend himself as best he can, but he desperately notes that his eyes can't even follow that speed. Desperate at the violence of the fight, Sasha darts toward them, shouting for her father to stop it right now. The man orders his daughter not to get involved and shouts that he'll take that youngster with him no matter what. Though badly wounded and exhausted, Yo-sung refuses to back down, raising his fists again to keep fighting. The leader offers the boy to join him if he wants to survive, promising to teach him personally all the techniques he knows. He praises the youngster's natural strength for withstanding attack that his elite soldiers could never endure, and promises to grant him more power. Yungo finds it ridiculous to receive such an offer after nearly losing his life, and notes that the man is truly elated. The protagonist flashes a sideways grin and begins to answer the powerful opponent's invitation with firm resolve. He recalls all the loved ones he met in this new world and concludes there's no point abandoning everything for that offer. With pure determination in his eyes, Yo-sung charges forward and shouts that he has no reason whatsoever to accept that absurd proposal. The boy orders the man to back off at once, but the rival only finds admirable the young student's strong conviction. The leader of Luxia readies his fist and declares he'll take care of crushing that beautiful determination of the protagonist. He roars that he'll smash the youngster's willpower, while Sasha watches the scene in complete shock. The two mighty fighters clash fists again in the middle of the street, generating an immense burst of energy. With the impact, Yo-sung feels the full weight of the devastating blow strike his face and lets out another cry of pain as he's shoved backward. The force of the hit is so brutal that the youth is hurled several meters away by the opponent, relentless. The protagonist tries to stay firmly on his feet, but his body already begins to give clear signs of extreme fatigue and physical exhaustion seizing the boy's weariness. The swift man reappears right in front of him to launch another dangerous onslaught. The seasoned warrior unleashes another terrifying attack, creating a massive shockwave that shatters the ground around Yo-sung. He continues attacking without giving him the slightest chance to recover, showing he won't make life easy for the young scholar. In a lightning-fast motion, the man lunges and grabs the neck of Yo-sung's coat with extreme ease. The protagonist is struck with full force once more, failing to show any efficient defensive reaction. The young man spits blood and, desperate, notes that this opponent is on a power level far beyond that of Captain Boris, who lies on the ground before the mighty rival. Yo-sung finally understands what it means to face head on the strongest warrior of all. Sasha can't stand the needless brutality any longer and screams desperately for her father to stop the assault. She steps in front of him, demanding that he only protected the boy, but the man coldly orders her to get out of his way. Sasha refuses to move, standing in front of her friend, which infuriates her father with her outright defiance. With no patience for further argument, the Luxia leader delivers a swift blow to his own daughter's nape, sending her crashing into unconsciousness. Sasha collapses limp in her father's arms while Yo-sung watches the cruel scene, too weak to rise. He angrily questions whether the man truly has no mercy, not even for his own daughter, when she steps into the fight. The youth struggles to stay on his feet with great difficulty, while Sasha remains sprawled on the ground right beside him. Sasha's father eyes the boy coldly and says he talks too much, deciding it's time to end everything at once. The relentless Luxia leader readies his gleaming fist and attacked with full force, delivering the finishing blow. The massive fist hurtles toward the protagonist, but something unexpected slices the air and halts the assault in the final second. The man is taken aback as a blade scrapes across his face, forcing him to abort the strike instantly. Several razor-sharp kunais rain down from the sky, embedding themselves in the ground right between the two fighters, creating a protective barrier on the spot. Both Yusun and his opponent are left utterly confused and startled by the sudden interference in the fight. Sasha's father spots the weapons on the curb and, frightened, realizes they're the famed shurikens of the legendary Black Yasha. Suddenly, a sharp thread scrapes across the man's cheek, leaving him even more shocked, and on high alert, Fuma Yukika bursts from above in a spectacular fashion, advancing with speed and determination to strike the imposing Luxia boss. She lands gracefully between the two and assumes a combat stance to shield Yo-sung from further brutal assault. Yo-sung looks quite astonished at the purple-haired girl and instantly recognizes her as his school superior. The newcomer is introduced as Fuma Yukika, interim leader of the 17th generation of the prestigious Fuma ninja clan. The young man is left bewildered and asks why his beloved superior has materialized out of nowhere in such a perilous place. The Luxia leader looks at the young ninja and mentions the name Fuma Kataro, the legendary warrior he's been seeking. Yukika reveals that this mysterious warrior is her father, but he left the village 10 years ago and they've lost all contact since. The man listens to the revelation in silence and remarks that he's already heard some rumors interesting about that ancient tale. He concludes that the rumors about the legendary Black Yasha's daughter were true and finally recognizes the girl's identity. Without wasting a second, Yukika hands a gleaming golden pill to Yu Sung and orders the youth to swallow the medicine as fast as possible. She explains it's a secret family pill that will help him awaken and unleash all the hidden power within. Sasha's father steps forward, irritated, warning he won't just stand by while the two plot against him. Yukika shouts at Yo Sung to take the drug immediately and assures it will hold the dangerous foe until he's fully ready. Trusting his ally, the protagonist gulped the golden pill in a single gulp, hoping only that it doesn't end there killing him right after swallowing the secret medicine. The boy feels a fierce reaction and opens his eyes, terrified by the strange sensation coursing through his body. Panic erupts as an unbearable, overwhelming heat floods him, burning intensely through every internal vein. Yusun lets out a raw cry of pain while Sasha watches from afar, deeply worried about the youngster's condition. The young man's chest begins to blaze in vivid gold and crimson hues as if a massive bonfire were raging inside him. Unable to contain the absurd energy, Yo Sung lets out a powerful roar while an immense explosion of flames engulfs his entire body. The sudden display of power leaves the Luxia boss and the young Yukika completely stunned by the sheer intensity of that force. Yo Sung's clothing is partially torn as golden flames wrap his muscular frame in a radiant aura. The protagonist clenches his fist tightly and feels as if something immensely powerful is finally being unleashed within him. He opens his eyes, glowing with energy, and notices an inexplicable spiritual force has just spread throughout his entire body. The young man reflects that it's as if a third spiritual eye is opening in his mind, completely altering his perception. He confronts the opponent at close range and feels a quantity absurd of unknown energy, emanating both from himself and from the rival Yukika. She watches, frightened, and notes that the pill's effect was even greater than she expected, releasing the entire flow of the boy's energy. However, she remains worried, remembering that the special drug's effect lasts only about 5 minutes in his body. She wonders if that time will be enough while Sasha's father amuses himself with the situation, praising the mysticism of the East. Yusung is impressed by channeling so much power and tells his rival that he finally understands what kind of person he truly is. The young man declares with a solemn gaze that the opponent is nothing but a terrible, hopeless villain for having attacked his own daughter. The leader of Luxia merely lets out a low growl, seeming not to care at all about the young student's harsh words. Right after, he erupts in a high, mocking laugh of pure amusement at the serious threat of the protagonist. He points a finger at Yo Sung and coldly declares that such moralistic speeches are merely excuses used by the weak. The man goes on to say that the natural law of the world is that the strong strip the weak of their freedom to demonstrate their power. With that, he challenges Yo Sung to try to defeat him right then if he wants to prove his worldview is completely wrong. The powerful leader summons an intimidating aura of a massive white energy tiger around him and says the youth will only win if he's capable. In the blink of an eye, the imposing man lunges forward and delivers an extremely fast strike toward the protagonist. The two begin trading lightning-fast blows in the air, and Yunong sees that his opponent's strength and speed remain absurdly overwhelming. The seasoned martial arts master flashes a satisfied grin as the kid finally keeps pace. Thanks to the secret pill's power, Yo Sung happily realizes he can now see and dodge the rapid attack with crystal-clear precision. The battle escalates spectacularly as the two exchange swift strikes wrapped in glowing energy auras. To his own surprise, Yo Sung finally reads and anticipates every move of his rival perfectly, focusing all his attention on the fight. The youngster spots the perfect opening and decides that this is the exact moment to act. He dodges with mastery and readies a devastating blow, charging full force against the powerful opponent's defense. The kid lands a full-force strike to the man's face, leaving the Deluxia leader completely stunned by the brutal impact. The force of the hit is so monstrous that the seasoned warrior's feet slide backward, dragging across the sidewalk. He freezes in total shock, unable to grasp that he's being shoved and overrun by a simple student's attack. Without giving the enemy a breath, the protagonist continues his relentless barrage of heavy, precise blows. The man tries to defend as best he can, but is shocked to see the kid's movements become infinitely sharper. He wonders if that terrifying evolution is due to the pill, the strange one the youngster swallowed moments ago. Dissatisfied with losing, the warrior summons the Emperor Griffin technique, swearing he will never be defeated by a high school student. The head of the corporation lets out an enraged shout while channeling all his remaining energy to unleash his most powerful strike. He advances toward Yo Sung with bloodlust, class, shouting for the kid to finish once and for all with that attack. The protagonist remains calm in the face of imminent danger and readies himself to absorb his adversary's final onslaught. He extends his arm and hurls his fist with incredible force, slamming his direct attack against the enemy's power. The Luxia leader lets out an arrogant laugh and shouts that it's impossible for the kid to block a blow of that caliber. He swears he'll tear the protagonist's hands off using the force of his claws as the two powers clash brutally. Yet Yu Zunk shows not the slightest concern and calmly acknowledges the opponent's empty provocations. The youngster concentrates even further and orders the villain to hold firm, emanating a massive surge of energy truly terrifying. The hero's punch shatters the rival's defensive barrier, completely crushing the enemy's attack with extreme ease. Next, Yu Sung delivers a devastating kick that hurls the powerful opponent away, generating an immense shockwave. The seasoned warrior lets out a cry of pain as the overwhelming force of the blow hits him, and he collapses completely out of the fight. Hayu Sun lands on the ground triumphantly as the excess energy in his body slowly evaporates into the air. Fallen to the ground and powerless to react, the Luxia leader grumbles in discontent, finding that defeat utterly impossible. He cannot accept that he, Ivan Romanov, the supreme master hailed as the strongest man on earth, has been defeated. The proud warrior feels humiliated for having been defeated and outclassed in combat by a mere high school kid. He closes his eyes with great frustration, silently lamenting that things ended in such a humiliating way. Yu Sun stands still watching the defeated opponent on the ground. He lets out a heavy sigh as he begins to catch his breath. The protagonist steps toward the fallen man and, in a calm tone, says he hates having to ruin his dramatic moment. He reveals with a good-natured grin that, in fact, he's not a Japanese student at all, but a proud young Korean. Yukika and Sasha watch the climax of that monumental battle with their mouths agape, completely frozen by sheer impact and astonishment. The victory belongs to Kim Yo Sung, who stands imposingly after having bested the most dangerous opponent of his life. The legendary unbeaten champion and head of the military corporation has just been utterly knocked out and humiliatedly dumped on the ground. Yukika, impressed, admits that the youngster truly won, though she knows he merely exploited a gap in the fight. She wonders what the true limit of the kid's absurd power is as he wipes sweat and grime from his face. Sasha darts desperately toward Yoon-sun, eyes filled with tears, and asks. He asks if she's truly okay after the fight. The protagonist apologizes to his friend for hurting her father, but she gently replies that it doesn't matter. She says it doesn't matter. Yukika offers to clean up the mess and orders the boy to leave, leaving him a bit uneasy with her kindness. Sasha assures that her father won't die that easily and promises to get in touch if any help is needed, sending the young man away. However, before he can take a step, Yusung's body finally gives out from extreme fatigue and he begins to slump backward. Yukika catches him, says she'll get him out of there, and orders Sasha to leave quickly before a crowd of curious onlookers begin to appear. The hero finally manages to rest, sleeping with an extremely serene and tranquil expression. On his superior ninja Sasha's shoulders, he watches the two depart with a gentle smile, while the local residents begin to crowd around her father. People on the street start murmuring in surprise as they recognize the famed champion Ivan Romanov, humiliatedly lying on the curb. A few days pass, the long-awaited vacation finally comes to an end, and school classes resume their normal pace. Yusun awakens, no dialogue needed. The scene ends with Yusun opening his eyes. He feels aches all over his body, mutters under his breath as he twists his neck to ease the intense muscular tension. He walks the school halls, lost in thought, reflecting on how lucky he was to survive that massive mess. The young man finds it odd that, since that day, no news or comment about the monumental fight has surfaced online. He admits to himself that the total silence makes him even more uneasy, but he's interrupted by the teacher. Entering the classroom, the teacher demands quiet and enthusiastically announces that the group will welcome today a new student transferred directly from a Russian school. Suddenly, the classroom door creaks open slowly, and a bright, friendly voice greets everyone inside. A stunning girl with long, radiant blue hair steps in, instantly drawing the attention of every student. Yo Sung turns to see who just walked in and is absolutely stunned when he recognizes the person standing right before him. The new student cheerfully introduces herself as Alexandra Romanova and, in a friendly tone, tells everyone they can simply call her Sasha. The protagonist panics as he realizes his hunch was right and that the Russian girl really transferred to his school. Sasha then shares a bit about her hobbies. Sasha talks a little about her pastimes. She lists horseback riding, reading manga, and watching anime, then reveals what she's recently started to love the most. She makes a dramatic gesture, pointing her finger toward the group, leaving the curious students with that sudden attitude. To the protagonist's despair, the new student points her finger directly at him and shouts Kim Yo Sung's name so the whole class can hear. Yo Sung freezes, paralyzed by panic and dread, unable to believe what just rang out across the room. Ryuji Sakamoto. He flashes a playful grin and remarked that this random love declaration feels straight out of a classic rom-com scene. The protagonist begins to break out in nervous sweat as he realizes his long-cherished, peaceful extra life has been shattered once again. With a bright, confident smile, Sasha keeps pointing at Yo Sung under the attentive, curious gazes of the entire classroom. The other students gather around their new classmate, impressed that she's Russian and asking her how she also learned to speak Japanese. Sasha sits surrounded by classmates and cheerfully explains. He says he learned the language on his own, watching countless anime since childhood. While the students chat, Dojo Karen strides up to Yo Sung, dead serious, and asks whether the new girl's confession was genuine. Sasha, upbeat, chimes in that Yo Sung helped her a lot and reveals her ideal man has always been someone even stronger than her own father. The class starts buzzing, stunned by the other girls swooning over Yo Sung, and they wonder if he really fought Sasha's father, Yo Sung, while Rika breaks out in a cold sweat, nervous at the bizarre rumors. An absurd gossip has already begun to spread through the whole classroom. Kishimoto Rika glances sideways, her expression grave and thoughtful. She tries to make sense of what's happening. Rika taps Yo Sung and jokes that he's quick. She only had to be away a short while for him to land a foreign girlfriend. She complains that his answer sounds like a rom-com protagonist's excuse. Leaving Yo Sung speechless, the young man reflects that Sasha should focus her attention on Sakamoto, the original hero of the game, not on a mere secretary like himself. He worries his tiny tweak to the original story are steering things off course and stealing his chance at peace. At that moment, Rika and Yo Sung are interrupted by a familiar voice cheerfully calling them amid the classroom chaos. Toho Karen bursts onto the scene in her sportswear, beaming, announcing she's only here to hang out with friends. Karen wraps an arm around Yo Sung from behind with plenty of confidence, cheerfully asking if his friend made good use of the vacation period. Sasha can't stand the sight and shoots a deadly, insanely jealous glare at the red-haired girl. Without mincing words, the Russian points at Karen and coldly demands she back off from Yo Sung right now. Karen erupts furious at the newcomer's audacity, shouting who she thinks she is to order her around in her first encounter. Sasha places a hand over her chest smugly, and she readies herself to give a final answer to her new angry rival. She proudly declares that she's the one who will become Yo Sung's girlfriend, leaving both the boy and Karen utterly stunned. Karen's face turns bright red with embarrassment and she shouts indignantly, refusing to accept the foreign brat's daring claim, retorting that Yo Sung is already the rich girl's boyfriend, leaving the poor blonde completely shocked and speechless in the classroom. Yo Sung tries to intervene desperately in the discussion, saying it's nothing more than a massive misunderstanding on everyone's part. Yo Sung falls into total despair when he realizes he's become Rika's boyfriend without even noticing it, concluding that things are spiraling out of control. Rika turns tomato red and embarrassed shouts that they have nothing like that she and Yo Sung are just childhood friends. Sasha flashes a victorious smile as she realizes she misread everything and the path to win the boy is completely clear. She celebrates, declaring she can keep Yo Sung all to herself, driving Karen to lose patience and send her rival out to settle it. Amid the noisy clash of the girls in the background, a bespectacled, braid-wearing student calmly approaches Yo Sung's desk to talk to him. Class Rep Ice politely asks if she may speak with him, and Yo Sung responds cheerfully to the request. He explains he got distracted during class and asks to borrow his notebook for a moment. Yo Sung promptly agrees and hands his notebook to the representative with a friendly smile on his face. He thanks her politely for the help and promises to return the notebook as soon as he finishes copying all the missed material. Rika looks confused and remarks she thought the class rep was a true genius in studies and would never need outside help. Karen agrees and questions why the top student is taking Yo Sung's note since he seems just a big goof. Focused on his muscles, the girls eye Yo Sung warily and ask him what his rank is in the standings, making Yo Sung realize that all of them thought he was a fool. Yo Sung replies with utter confidence that he's in first place for the whole year, leaving all the girls gaping in shock. His classmate Mamachi bursts out laughing and says that actually Yo Sung looks like someone who would be terrible at schoolwork. He gives Yo Sung a friendly pat on the back and explains that everyone would react that way if he hadn't entered as the #1 student at the school. The girls watch the scene and notice that Mamachi isn't scared of Yo Sung at all, because she knows that deep down he's an incredibly awesome. The girls cheerfully agree with Mamachi, confirming that Yo Sung is truly a super kind person once you get to know him. Yo Sung feels deeply embarrassed by the sudden compliments and decides to head to the bathroom to escape the awkwardness. His friends keep teasing him as he walks away, laughing at how he turned visibly red with embarrassment. He walks pensively and decides that the best strategy for today is to keep a certain distance from Sasha and act more discreetly. Time flies and the story now jumps straight to the school cafeteria, right at the much-awaited lunch hour. To his misfortune, Yaun ends up sitting at the same table as Sasha, Karen, and Rika, surrounded once again by the three girls. The boy is left extremely frustrated as he realizes his perfect plan to keep his distance from the girls has miserably failed. He tries to protest, saying Sasha isn't his girlfriend, but the girls keep ignoring him, chatting animatedly around him. Meanwhile, the other students nearby start staring Yo-soon for eating lunch with three beautiful girls. The protagonist notices the angry looks and gossip from his peers and tries desperately to think of a plan to get out of this situation. Suddenly, a brilliant idea sparks in Yo-sung's mind, bringing a grin of pure hope and cunning to the youngster's face. He scoffs, noting that the midterms are coming up, and asks if the three are actually studying and prepared for the test. Rika looks completely disheartened by the question and complains that he shouldn't bring up boring exams right in the middle of lunch. The atmosphere at the table shifts entirely to pure gloom, and the boys silently celebrate because his plan worked on the first try. Rika sighs dejectedly while eating, lamenting deeply for not having studied much more in the previous days. Karen complains about history and Sasha says she finds classic Japanese literature very hard since it's written in an archaic Japanese. Yo-sung flashes a satisfied smile. Seeing their desperation, he concludes that this is the chance perfect to finally secure his long-awaited peace. He suggests the three form a study group to help each other, and the girls love the idea, finding the proposal simply brilliant. Karen offers to host the study group at her place since she has plenty of empty rooms, proposing even a fun pajama night. The protagonist is overjoyed to have a problem-free weekend and wishes the three good luck on their studies and exams. The weekend finally arrives, and the scene now cuts straight to the comfortable, quiet house of Kim Yo-sung. The young man sighs with pure relief at finally having peace and quiet to focus on what he loves most in life. He celebrates enthusiastically as he sees his very own home gym finally set up and ready to use. He explains he bought all the new weight training equipment with the money he earned protecting Sasha during the Golden Week. Absolutely thrilled, Yo-sung lies down on the bench and decides to start his heavy training with his favorite move, the bench press, beginning to lift the bar. He hoists the weights with ease, letting out a hearty laugh, feeling extremely good and renewed. However, his training is shattered by the phone's ring, baffling him with a call so early on a Saturday. Yo-sung answers and is startled by Rika, who orders him to look immediately out the window, asking if he's completely ready. The young man opens the window, bewildered, and Rika reminds him they arranged yesterday to all head to the study group at Karen's house. The protagonist is left clueless, while Rika shouts cheerfully down below from the street, catching his attention at the window. The blonde smiles and waves, telling him to come down quickly, but the young man notices a massive crowd of terrifying men behind her. Yo-sung is utterly terrified and panics at the sight of a legion of hulking guys standing on his sidewalk. He screams desperately from the window, asking who all these scary, stern-faced men are who are accompanying the girl. Kim Yo-sung is completely stunned, unable to make sense of what he's seeing. Rika tells him not to waste time and to get into the car quickly, as several formidable bodyguards accompany her. When he looks inside the vehicle, the protagonist meets a man wrapped in bandages on his head who greets him in Russian. In that instant, he recognizes the guy and recalls that he was the one he himself defeated in a recent bout. Rika introduces the man, saying he's Boris, Sasha's uncle, leaving Yo-sung even more shocked by the revelation. Rika explains that Boris does not speak Japanese, but assures that he's a genuinely cool guy despite his intimidating look. Yo-sung whispers, asking how that happened, and Sasha replies that she needs Boris there since he's her bodyguard. Even so, the protagonist feels extremely uneasy sitting in the same car as the guy he nearly took down completely days ago. Finally, they arrive at a beautiful traditional Japanese-style house and are greeted by lively voices from inside. Karen's father welcomes them with a broad smile and invites them in, while the red-haired girl herself greets them warmly. Yo-sung realizes he's met her father before, but he pretends not to recognize him to avoid any awkwardness. He bows politely and introduces himself formally as Kim Yo-sung. Thanking them for the opportunity to be there, the man looks at the young man with pride, thinking how talented and close he is to his daughter, and praises Yo-sung aloud, saying he's doing great as the future son-in-law and heir he chose. Suddenly, Karen's father fixes his gaze on the driver and recognizes him, greeting him as Captain Boris after all these years. He comments, surprised, that Ivan Romanov's daughter is attending the same school and class as Karen Yo-sung, and looks puzzled when he sees they know each other, while Sasha claims she knows nothing about that old connection. Karen's father notices Boris's bandages and asks what could have caused such injuries. studies. Without hesitation, Boris lifts his hand and points directly in a direction to answer. He reveals that all his wounds were inflicted by Kim Yo-sung, leaving the young man terrified by the direct accusation. The bespectacled aide translates Boris's words, and Rika screams in shock, unable to believe what she just heard. The translator adds that even the legendary Ivan Romanov was defeated by the youngster, leaving Karen's father in utter disbelief. Yo-sung falls into complete despair, thinking everything is ruined and that probably he'll be kicked out of the house. But he soon realizes that if he's thrown out, he'll finally have the chance to go home and train in peace at his gym. Yet he's taken aback when Karen's father lets out an enthusiastic shout, saying that's simply incredible. The man pulls the protagonist into a hug, laughing heartily, and declares with absolute certainty that he is the perfect son-in-law for his daughter. Karen turns a deep shade of red with embarrassment and argues with her father, who apologizes. After all that mess and pure tension, the protagonist finally lets out a long sigh of relief. The young man rubs his temples, complaining about Boris's habit of reporting everything, while things gradually begin to settle. With everyone properly seated around the table, Yo-sung decides it's time to get organized before starting the study session with Visa, who analyzes each girl's weak points, and he begins with Rika, pointing out that she needs to focus on science formulas. He hands her a summary he prepared at home to help her memorize everything that will come on the exam directly. He warns the girls that the test is fast approaching, demanding they quit the nonsense and push themselves to memorize everything. Next, Yo-sung calls Karen's attention. She reacts fearfully, and the moment she hears her name, she's called up for the assessment. He explains that her grades are average across the board, but points out that her biggest weakness is a severe difficulty memorizing the material. The young man suggests she try devising her own memorization method, and Karen accepts the advice, eager and determined to work hard. Brimming with anticipation, Sasha smiles with a flushed face and asks what the protagonist prepared to help her with her studies. He bluntly warns that it will be hard for her to grasp the concepts at first, and that repetition will be the only path. Yo soon hands over study material he made for himself, saying the two of them will go over all the content together. With all the guidance given, the group finally begins the long study session with utmost seriousness around the table. Just an hour after starting, the girls already begin to show clear signs of fatigue and lack of focus. 2 hours pass and performance collapses completely, with Rika falling into a deep sleep directly on the study table. Noticing the momentum has stalled, Yo-sung decides to call a pause, provoking a celebration immediate and very joyful among the girls. The protagonist takes advantage of the intermission to ask Karen if he can use her kitchen for a few moments, leaving her confused. He flashes a wide grin, explaining he intends to prepare a special snack to restore the energy of everyone who's been studying so hard. Moments later, he returns to the study room bearing the lovingly prepared surprise for his friends, a perfectly crafted shaved ice dessert that makes the girls' eyes sparkle with hunger. Enchanted by the traditional Korean treat, they gush over its beautiful, mouth-watering appearance. Yo soon invites them to pick any flavors they like, and the girls quickly pull out their phones to snap photos of the confection. As everyone gets ready to eat, Sasha fixes her gaze on Yo soon with a mysterious smile. She calls his name, brings a spoonful of the sweet treat forward, and affectionately suggests they try each other's bite, leaving Yo soon visibly confused. The young man feels quite embarrassed by the situation. She suddenly tries to politely decline, saying she doesn't need to do that. She insists, pulling a cute face, and complains that her arm is already tired from holding the spoon, urging him to accept. With little choice, Yo-sung ends up taking the spoonful, while Rika and Karen watch from the back with pure fury. Sasha asks if it was good and tells him to do the same, while the atmosphere in the room becomes extremely tense. Fueled by the other girls' jealousy, Rika and Karen immediately jump into the dispute and demand that Yo-sung also try their sweet, leaving the young man completely without knowing what to do. The two girls complain that the situation is wildly unfair and start pressuring the protagonist to feed them without any further delay. At that moment, Karen silently reflects and realizes she was foolish to jump to the hasty conclusion that the two were dating. She recalls a recent conversation that made it crystal clear their relationship was nothing more than a solid friendship. Seeing she'd been completely wrong all along, an upbeat thought sparks in the redhead's mind about her own chances. She fondly remembers the exact moment in the past when she truly fell for Yo-sung as he comforted her. Certain they aren't together, Karen steels herself with determination and pushes forward, resolute to offer him her own sweet. The redhead keeps her focus, convinced she still has a chance. A real shot at winning the young man's heart. Time passes after that hectic day, and the scene shifts back to school, right in front of the second-year classroom sign. Rika bursts onto the screen, glowing with excitement, shouting that that the dreaded midterms are finally over. She celebrates with glee that she scored a grade much better than usual, and Yoo-sung congratulates her, saying it was all thanks to her effort. Rika. He then suggests everyone celebrate the end of exams by going to karaoke, and a classmate instantly agrees. While Rika promises to foot the karaoke tab for everyone, the guy beside her plunges into a slump over his awful test scores, shifting the mood. He warns Yoo-sung about new malicious rumors circulating at school that have been spreading about him lately around the school. He says the new rumor claims that the protagonist took on roughly 20 dangerous members of the Russian mafia all by himself right in the middle of the street. The classmate finds the tale amusing, calling it straight out of a movie, never suspecting that Yoo-sung actually got tangled in something similar back in Akihabara. Suddenly, Sasha pops up right behind Yoo-sung with a mischievous grin, asking if that story is really just a dumb rumor. Right after, the Russian girl strikes a dramatic, animated pose, declaring she's ready to hit karaoke and show her beautiful voice to the world. Sasha. She's already picking her favorite song, and the group decides it's time to quit talking and head out. The scene cuts straight to bustling Shibuya, where the friends arrive under a bright, cloudless sky. The girls stroll energetically, hopping along the crowded streets eager to belt out songs and make the most of the outing. Suddenly, a classmate checks the time and asks if anyone's still hungry, and Rika agrees it's past lunch. He suggests they drop by a nearby craft burger joint. They were just nearby, but they're interrupted by the loud roar of a motor coming closer. A motorcycle roars in at breakneck speed, skimming just inches from Rika, making her scream in fright and nearly tumble to the ground. The rude motorcyclist still shouts back, hurling insults at the girl, while the friend tries to protest his reckless attitude. Yoo-sung darts forward to check on his friend, but she panics, realizing her wallet is gone, stolen by the motorcyclist must have snatched it from her bag. With the serious expression, the protagonist hands his backpack to the girl and says calmly to wait right there while he sorts out the situation, without losing any more time. Yo soon bolts off at a blistering speed impressively, hot on the heels of the criminal fleeing on a motorbike. Rika is left in total shock, screaming her friend's name in desperation as he darts away so suddenly and fast. He shouts back, ordering the girls to go into the shop while he guarantees he'll retrieve the stolen wallet by any means. In an alley, the robber boasts loudly with his accomplice about the easy heist he just pulled, marveling at the amount of cash the student had in her wallet, while his accomplice shows a hint of worry. Suddenly, a noise of deafening running footsteps begins to echo through the area, leaving the accomplice utterly terrified as he points to the side. The biker gets spooked when he sees Yoo-sung sprinting toward them with terrifying fury, while the youngster demands that he return the wallet immediately. In sheer desperation, the crook tries to floor his bike to flee from that strange, terrifying figure. He scoffs, saying no foot soldier could catch a bike at that speed, not noticing the protagonist is right behind. In the blink of an eye, Yoonung catches up to the vehicle with ease and grabs the biker by the jacket collar, leaving the guy in absolute panic. With his eyes flashing a threatening hue, the youngster orders the thief to hand over the item right now, looking like a true raging monster. He squeezes possible, while the young man shouts a final warning. He orders the offender never to dare commit crimes like that again. Now calmer, Yoon tucks the recovered wallet away and lets out a low grumble, irritated by having endured all that stress for nothing. He beams with joy at having retrieved the wallet safe and sound after that whole chase. The young man catches his friend's bright smile as she announces it's karaoke time, remembering she had promised to foot the bill everything. As he strolls away satisfied, the protagonist remains oblivious to the muscular man watching him from the shadows. The mysterious figure in a dark jacket, his expression solemn, silently tracks every step Yoo-sung takes. The day draws to a close and the sky takes on an orange hue. Orange light washes over the group as they cheerfully say goodbye after a night of fun. Yoo-sung walks back home, content thinking how great the day was and eager to see his friends at school again. He plans to head straight to his home gym for a training session. He felt weighed down, but his thoughts are interrupted when someone calls him boss. The young man stops and looks back, utterly confused by the loud voice begging him to wait just a moment. He comes face to face with the mysterious man sporting a pompadour, who shouts dramatically. He says he has something very important to discuss. Yoo-sung forces a smile and asks him outright who he is, completely clueless about the reason for all this commotion. Without saying a word, the man darts toward the protagonist. He throws himself to his knees with a thunderous thud, pleading loudly for Yoo-sung to accept him as his disciple, leaving the young man stunned and speechless. The onlookers start whispering about the bizarre scene, causing Yoo-sung to shout irritably, asking who the hell he really is. The man grabs the protagonist's clothing and introduces himself formally as Godu Kazuya, while Yoo-sung desperately begs him to stand up. Kazuya says he can just call him Katsu, but Yoo-sung pleads for him to stop this whole Street scandal. Trying to understand the situation, strange, the protagonist decides to ask the true age of the young Kazuya. He answers proudly that he's only 17 years old, leaving Yo-sung to wonder how someone so young can look so old. The hulking one then reveals that he is none other than the leader of a notorious, feared motorcycle gang in the region. He admits, embarrassed, that the thieves who stole the wallet earlier were from his crew, and Yo-sung wonders why he followed him. Kazuya explains he followed him because he saw in him the true definition of a real man, leaving the protagonist even more confused. He begins to recount his past, revealing that, despite always having a massive frame, his personality was shy. Because of his timidity, Kazuya endured a lot of bullying from other kids, both inside and outside Ravella school, which tormented him, and he started to think that if he became truly strong, things would improve. Kazuya believes that if he attained real power, no one in the world would dare look at him with contempt again. For that reason, he started acting like a tough, rebellious type to try to match his demeanor with his intimidating appearance. In the end, he became a gang leader just to look strong, but deep down, he remained the same coward pretending to be someone else. He laments deeply that someone like him, who suffered for being weak, ended up joining people who also abuse others. Kazuya points out that his gang relies heavily on motorcycles, but he was fascinated to see Yo-sung manage to catch one of them on foot. He continues praising the kid, saying he didn't use all that absurd strength just to show off in front of the onlookers. Kazuya gets emotional, recalling that Yo-sung used his incredible power solely to protect a friend in trouble. He claims that that's what it means to be a manadeni novoset man, right? While the protagonist silently thinks he just wanted free karaoke. The hulking one pleads once more to be accepted as a disciple, but Yo-sung rejects him, saying he has nothing to teach and isn't that kind of person. Yo-sung holds his head, unsure how to get rid of the kid, lamenting his odd luck of always attracting strange people. Suddenly, a brilliant idea springs to the protagonist's mind as the perfect solution to solve that huge problem. Yo-sung crosses his arms and says he'll take the kid as his disciple, leaving Kazuya extremely surprised and thrilled with the answer. However, the kid warns right then that there's a crucial condition for it to actually happen. He flicks his fingers, indicating that Kazuya will have to undergo a grueling test lasting exactly 3 days. Yo-sung explains that the big guy must accompany him and try to hold fast through his entire heavy daily training routine. If he manages to survive those 3 days without quitting, Yo-sung promises to finally accept him as his official disciple. The big guy gets a little tense about the challenge, unaware of the secret plans racing through the protagonist's mind. Yo-sung flashes a malicious grin and plans to throw Kazuya into a real hell so he'll quit fast and never bother him again.